so alive. All right. So alive. Sing God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, you set up into your word. And for once you have spoken, all nature and science, they follow the sound of your voice. Oh, and as you speak, oh, a heart in rebellion, creatures catch their breath. They're evolving in pursuit of what you said. If it all reveals your nature, so will I. I can see your heart in everything you say. Every pain is sky, it's a canvas of your grace. If creation still obeys you, so will I. Come on, let's give him praise for this morning, 9 o'clock. Lift up his name, come on.
It's the anti-checker.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulties.
I'm Michael J. Crawford, and I approved this video.
The following video is brought to you by the Elect Anti-Checker in 2020 campaign. Hey, we've been electing pieces of crap for years. Why not do it literally?
What's going on, guys? Michael J. Crawford, the Anti-Checker / Rational Roundtable on Sundays. Good to see y'all. Bradley was first in the house today. Good to see you. Dan23 says hi. Commander Shran says hello. Jeff Franklin says, last as always, good morning, Rational Roundtable. Good morning, Jeff. Piano Dean says, feeling very rational and round today. Well, round, yes. Rational, sure, why not? By the way, Piano Dean, it's funny. I hadn't thought about this until actually just now, is that I know you play the piano for a living in South Carolina. And you told me in your one message that you used to play the piano in Portland, Oregon. And so that's just kind of funny because Mrs. Anti-Checker was born in South Carolina, but raised in Portland, Oregon. So there you go. Schromer says, greetings, Rational Roundtable and fellow nerds. How you doing, Schromer? That guy has a great voice. Oh, yeah. That Kyle, he is an incredible performer. I'll tell you, I generally, when I go to church, I am not the guy that gets into the music at a church. I care more about the consistency and logic of the teaching. Is it following what, is it accurate? Is it, that kind of thing. I'm more analytical, if you will. But Kyle, man, he gets you going. Valor says, how are you feeling? Well, mentally not bad. Physically kind of a wreck. But hanging in there. Thank you, my friend. And Mr. Miles says late. Yeah, I'm a little late today. Honestly, here's the thing. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going back to work. In fact, 2 weeks from tomorrow, I'm scheduled to return to my job. And so right now, I'm getting as much rest as I can, because I have not been able to sleep. Hopefully my new CPAP machine is supposed to arrive tomorrow, and I'll be able to get some rest. And man, because I am exhausted, quite literally. Aberjam says, greetings, brother. How you doing, my friend? Mr. Miles says, and I see you haven't responded to the Skype message I sent you yesterday. I'm so sorry about that, Miles. I know you sent me a message on Twitter, which I did respond to, but I assume you had gone to bed. So I will take care of I assume it has to do with that one inaccuracy that I recorded, and if you want me to re-record, and if so, I will get that taken care of for tomorrow, or today, I mean. If not, I'll read through what you got there and let you know. And let's see. Do you mind if I can't? Absolutely, Joe. That's perfectly fine. Just give me just a minute's warning, and that'll be fine, and I'll get it set up. Let's see. Where was I? So it looks like we're going to have a special guest today in a little bit. Bird of Prey is always first, always awesome, and he doesn't have a ninja dog holding me hostage or anything. And I think he does, because, Mr. Miles is always first, and Bird of Prey is always evil, and he does have a ninja dog. And by the way, if you for anybody that's never had a beagle, beagles, man, they're funny because they're little dogs, but they're powerful for little dogs. And I don't mean, like, obviously a beagle is not like a serious threat if they were trying to get you or something. They're still little dogs, but they're much stronger than they appear to be. And they're also much faster than they appear to be. Like, they look like these cute little dogs. They're kind of on the plump side, and then all of a sudden, they take off like a bullet out of a gun. Auntie is a perfect example, because, you see Auntie up here all the time, and she's sleeping and snoozing and lazy and all that, and then all of a sudden, she'll just go running at 90 miles an hour, and it's just crazy. And yes, Bradley, beagles are a hunting breed. In fact, one of the first videos I ever took of Auntie was when I was taking her for a walk, and a wild rabbit happened to be nearby, which is what beagles were bred to hunt. And she went into the pointer position, and she was just like ready to go. And I was like, what has got her going? And then I looked, and sure enough, there's a rabbit. What do you think of when a church is damaged in a fire, but something survives, and people think it's a God miracle, and then the fire inspector gives his report on why it survived? Well, here's the thing. I think that sometimes people try to make too much out of just what is good luck. But I also think that people try to make too much out of what is just bad luck. So, for example, you have Christians that will say that the devil is trying to get them because they're having a bad day. And I'm sorry, but for most of us, the devil's got more important things to do than to make you lose your left sock, right? So, yeah. I would definitely... And some people think that, like, there are people that say, oh, Lord, thank you. So, it's a miracle I found my car keys. Well, no, you just remembered where your car keys were. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be appreciative of the breath in your lungs and the very fact that you're around and that kind of thing. It's just that, the fact that my coffee is not spilt on my lap, I would not call a divine intervention. I would just say that, well, that's because it's sitting on the table and I haven't accidentally knocked it over. Piano Dean says, I wanted a beagle because of Porthos, but a friend of mine had one. It was so noisy, never stopped, and I was like, nope. Yeah, I will tell you. Fortunately, Auntie is a quiet dog. She does not make a lot of noise, but when she does, wow, it'll scare the crap out of you. Beagles, but that goes back to them being hunting dogs. They need to be able to communicate over long distances, and they certainly can. A beagle's howl is incredibly loud. But fortunately, Auntie generally, the only time she makes any noise is if we've been gone from the house for more than a couple of hours. When we come home, she'll bark, mainly because she's excited that we're home. But she doesn't, fortunately, we have a couple of neighbors down the street that have a hound. Beagles are in the hound group of dogs, and their dogs, every time a police car goes by or every time, anything happens, their dogs are going crazy. Auntie doesn't do that. Darren said, good to see you, Darren. I think a lot of people are confused between miracles and divine providence. There's also confusion between demonic attack and trials. Yeah. And that's the thing. The Bible even says, it's funny because some of the great philosophers have come up with things like the problem of evil, right? And the problem of evil is supposed to be this gotcha question about, well, how could God possibly exist? Because if God is all love, why does evil exist in the world? Because if God doesn't want to get rid of evil in the world, then he isn't all love. And if he can't, then he's not God. So what's the deal? And the problem with that is that the Bible addresses that directly. So, and it's not, so it's kind of funny. How many pins and socks have you lost in your lifetime? Those are two of the most common things to go missing. Yeah, I'm sure quite a few, Dan. Ms. Ross says, for the record, I was waiting to hear from you last night for that recording, leaving both friend, colleague hanging like that. Not cool. I am sorry about that, Miles. I truly am. Here's what happened. And this is Saturday nights are kind of crazy for me. So when we go to church, for obvious reasons, we turn down the sound on our phones. And so then we go home, make dinner. By the time we got dinner ready, it's like 10 o'clock. And we actually watched, what was it? The Ready or Not, the horror movie. And then we watched half of episode 7 of The Witcher. We're going to finish off The Witcher. Or no, we watched the whole episode. So we watched episode 7 of The Witcher. We're going to try to finish off The Witcher tonight. But I forgot to turn the phone back up. And I frequently do that on Saturday nights, where I'll turn the phone down at church. And then after church, I forget to turn it back up. So you sent me a message. I did not hear it. I'm not trying to pass the buck. It's entirely my fault. And so I will hereby publicly apologize to you, Mr. Miles, for not getting back to you. Schromer says, miracles do exist, but not everything we call miracles are. One thing about the approval of miracles in the church is they must be examined by non-Catholics and preferably an atheist. Well, yeah, that's one thing I'll give some credit to the Catholic Church about, is that they are not real quick to call everything a miracle, that they're very quick to say, no, this is just, swamp gas or whatever. And so that I will definitely give some credit to the Catholic Church for. I think people they want miracles to be around because miracles are awesome, and to some it would be proof of the divine. But that's not how God works. God isn't there to prove himself. And the Bible says that. So, but people want that proof, even though God says, no, not going to get it. Valor says, Andy sleeps 90% of the day, only up to eat, drink, and use the bathroom. So in other words, she's a cat in a dog's body. I think there's some truth to that. Auntie sleeps a lot, but Auntie is an old dog. And so we don't know exactly how old, because she is a rescue and nobody knew for sure. We just know that she is definitely a senior. So the nice thing is she's a very sweet dog. She's not particularly noisy. She gets into some trouble because she likes to get the cat's food and stuff like that. But she's generally a well-behaved dog. The sad thing is, though, we just don't know how long we're going to have her because she's old, but we don't know how old. I do have a 13-year-old beagle, and it is the laziest, always hungry dog, but despite her age, she's like a rocket and adopts stray cats, brought home 2 of my 3. Very nice. Lucifer Morningstar was God's most beloved angel. That alone explains a lot. Well, actually, Lucifer, depending on, which story you're reading, Lucifer was the most beautiful of all of God's creatures, but Lucifer himself basically became envious of man's position. Greetings and felicitations, hip hip hurrah, and I believe it is pronounced tally-ho. Mr. Miles says, is God willing to prevent evil but not able, then he's not omnipotent. If he's able but not willing, then he's malevolent. If he is both able and willing, then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing, then why call him God? Yes, that is the proper enunciation of the problem of evil, Mr. Miles. I appreciate that. And the thing is that it leaves out what the Bible simply says. And it's funny because Neo even said it in the Matrix. Well, specifically in the Matrix Reloaded. The problem is choice. Is that God, if God removed all, from the time, he gave Adam and Eve the ability to fall. Now, a lot of people would say, well, geez, that's a setup right there. And in a way, it kind of is. But the problem is choice. If they did not have the ability to fall, then their not falling would mean nothing. If you don't have, and with the way that the world is, if God just provided everything, why would anybody not be an absolute follower of God? God wants people to make a choice. And you can't make a choice if you are compelled to make a choice in one way or the other, or the world is set up in such a way that only one choice is possible. Have you lost faith in TV franchises to make a decent show? By the strictest definition of the words, absolutely. I do not currently trust any of the producers in Hollywood right now to make a good franchise. However, that faith can be restored. I'm certainly hoping that they will be. Mr. Miles says, here's my problem with the whole free will thing. It doesn't stack up with the idea of a divine plan. Either he has a plan for us or we have free will. Well, but here's the thing. And I struggle with that a little bit myself, Miles. And so I'll tell you, as far as that was one thing that I had a problem with. How can we have free will and yet God has a specific plan for how he wants the universe to unfold? The answer is simple. Our individual choices are not going to change the outcome of his divine plan. And I know that sounds like a simplistic way to put it, but here's the thing. When you die, assuming the Bible is accurate for a moment, you will either be condemned or you will be, sent to paradise, one of the two. If, in fact, there was no free choice, then everybody would simply go to heaven or paradise, right? There would be no fall of man at all, right? There would be no need for hell because everybody would simply do exactly what God wants them to do all the time. That being said, that doesn't change the fact that there is a plan God has for mankind as a whole. Think about foundation. I can't remember what they call it, but where you can predict the actions of a society, but not of an individual. God may kind of push our humanity in one direction, but but you as an individual can choose to go with the plan or to go your own way. And that is entirely up to you. Are we made in a way to want to sin? I wouldn't say we are made in a way to want sin, but we do tend to want sin. And all really sin is falling short of perfection. Sin means missing the target being to be perfect. And so, but there are certain acts that we do that we're very short-sighted, Mage. That's the problem. I think it's one of those things that where we think that, if I have sex with this person over here, because that person's hot and everything, it'll be fun. and let's do that, right? So that's a sin to fornication. But what we're not thinking is that there's something even better over here. It's kind of like when we talk about the force. That is quick, easy. I see it right in front of me. This takes time, takes work, takes effort to build a relationship and get into a monogamous marriage and wait for that marriage and have an incredible sex life compared to a fun sex life. And so, are we made in a way to want sin? Not exactly, but what we do is we let what's fun or good or pleasant get in the way of what is the ultimate best, because we're very short-sighted. There was a sports player, and every time they appeared in sports commercials would say, it's God's given gift to sports. Do you like that kind of phrasing? Not particularly. I think we should get that kind of thing out of the lexicon, to be honest with you. Peter said, excuse me. Peter says, afternoon National Roundtable, Michael and all, how you doing? Joseph, a choice problem I'm facing now. Staying with my job I love, pay is okay, or take a new one I'm not sure I will like, 30% more money. Well, here's where I would fall with that. The 30% more money, is that a necessity? Or is it just a matter of it would be nice? If you're struggling to pay the bills right now, then the 30% more money might be more important. But it also depends. I know you say you love your job. How much do you love your job? Is there growth potential in the future? Can you continue with this job and be successful and be happy and be fulfilled? If so, well, do you want to roll the dice on the new job just because it has more money? And Fractal says, so you're saying God's plan is just general course of action, not a specific plan with every component known in advance. Well, here's the thing. And yes, in general, yes, it's not like God plans for you to put, like God didn't write in a script a million years ago that I was going to put on a brown shirt with a parody of Friday the 13th today, right? That's not a specific part of the plan. But God has a idea of what and here's the funny thing about the plan. At least from what I understand, reading and looking at what it says in Scripture, is that God has a goal with what he would like to do with each person as they come into being. But that person has the choice of whether they want to do that or not. And so, but he also has the overarching plan that will not falter. Absolutely will not falter. And if the actions of an individual are absolutely necessary in order to achieve the overarching plan, then God will, in fact, take someone's free will. And we've seen that in the Bible. That best example is Pharaoh from Exodus. That God removed Pharaoh's free will specifically because that was an important component of his plan. Now, people would ask why, because it's kind of a dick move, but I didn't design the plan. I don't it's beyond our comprehension. So yeah, I'm not going to go there. Opinion of Joan of Arc. Don't really have one, to be honest with you. I think that some people want to deify her, which I think is silly, but I don't believe in deifying any human being. Do you believe that there are other intelligent beings in the universe? And if so, did Jesus have to be savior on each of their planets? Do I believe that there's other intelligent beings in the universe? I think the odds are better that there are than there aren't. However, we will never know for sure in our lifetime, most likely, because interstellar travel is highly unlikely for some time. But is it possible? Absolutely, I think it's possible. Now, as far as did Jesus have to be a savior on each of those planets? Well, I guess it would depend on the behavior of those life forms. And that would actually be something very interesting, because I do believe that if we were to meet up with an alien culture, we learned to communicate and we didn't annihilate each other, what would our philosophical conversations be like? What would a truly alien species think of the idea of God? Do they already have the concept of God? And if so, if it's similar to ours, would some people take that as evidence that God is real, or would they just chalk it up to coincidence? So, Dan, whoa, and there goes the chat. Let me go back. Dan says, Rational Answer, what do you think of people out in public who wear a plaque that says the end is nigh? Well, technically they're kind of accurate, but they're also being stupid. Because they're not convincing anyone doing that. The people who want to hold up a plaque that says the end is nigh, or a picket sign or whatever, sure, you have the right to do that. But do you really think you're going to convince people to repent because of that sign? Probably not. I think that what's more effective is to just talk to people, have real conversations, and all that. Peter is in the house, says, I am doing okay, Rational Roundtable. How's you? I'm hanging in there, my friend. Physically, man, had a hair in my mouth. Don't know where that came from. I thought I had them all tied back, but that was weird. Man, my nose is itching like crazy. I'm hanging in there anyway. Physically, I'm kind of a mess, but mentally, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. You seem to be conflating marriage with monogamous relationship, and I strongly disagree that marriage, a religious ceremony, leads to better sex life than other monogamies. Well, Fractal, I'm just going to disagree with you on that. And yes, I do think, because here's the thing about a good marriage, right? There's different levels of having a fulfilled and happy relationship with a spouse, right? One is, and I know people are going to think this is horrible, but one I do think is that this is the only relationship that you take to that level, meaning that you are a virgin when you go into it. That can make a huge difference. As opposed to, well, you know, I've tried this and this and this, and, you know, you're about a 7 out of 10. You know, it's not supposed to just be about how skilled someone is at particular acts, right? It's supposed to be about the emotional bond and connection, and it should only be for one person, not for anybody you run into. And the more people you do it with, the less meaningful it becomes. And to where for some people, especially in the modern age where people are sleeping with people left and right, sex means nothing to them. Sex is just something fun to do. It's not, there's no emotional connection at all. But anyway, and they think they're having a great time. They don't realize what they're missing out on. So that's one element, right? And so if going from a purely hedonistic lifestyle versus saving yourself for marriage, that definitely is an improvement. Staying in a monogamous relationship, not having an open marriage or cheating on your spouse or anything like that, that's also very important. That takes it up to the next level. But what ultimately takes it to the highest level is, I think, a proper relationship with God in that mix. And that's why the marriage ceremony is so important, because the marriage ceremony, a true Christian marriage ceremony, is that you are pledging before God that you are going to pledge each other to each other and follow the Christian values as far as what marriage is. And the funny thing is that, like, me and Mrs. Antrecker have been married for 26 years, and I have never met in my life a married couple that fought less than us. We're sure we have our arguments, but nothing over, not, you know, even though we've gone through hell and back with some of our, you know, with our finances, with, you know, dealing with, you know, having problems. We've had a couple of miscarriages. We've had injuries. We've had deaths. We've had all this stuff happen. And yet our marriage is just as strong as it ever was. And I give a lot of that to the fact that God comes first in our marriage. And I know some people think that's stupid and cheesy, but it works. Also, do you see the, do you see the irony of the idea of God forcing free will upon us? What are you talking about? You can't force free will on you. You can just say, okay, do what you want. I'm not forcing you to do anything. God doesn't force you to do anything except for if your actions are an absolute necessary component to God's plan. He can remove your free will, but for the overwhelming majority of people, there is nothing is forced on them. It's free will being forced. I find the very concept a bit funny. I don't understand. Why are you even saying that? You can't be forced to have free will. You can only be forced to not have free will. Although granted, from a purely naturalistic standpoint, I can understand why you might argue that there's no such thing as free will and that God inserted it into the system, which I kind of agree with that concept. But, giving someone free will is not the same as forcing them to do something. Do you think religious preachers who go to town centers and different places should continue to do it or stop? Depends on what they're doing, Dan. If you have I'll tell you, you know what? Our church actually does this every Friday. And I used to participate until my schedule no longer allowed. We have a street ministry every Friday in downtown Murfreesboro. And as far as I know, they are still doing it. Even though I'm not a part of that ministry anymore, I'm pretty sure they're still doing it. So what do? Do they stand on a soapbox and scream at the people that they're sinners and need to repent? Nope. Do we hand out free Bibles and offer prayer? Nope. You know what we do? We cook hot dogs and give out pot. We have a big ice, and by the way, we got a permit from the city to do this. We got a big cooler that we fill with various brands of soda pop. And then we have a big grill that we set up, and we start cooking hot dogs so that when the people come staggering out of the bars at 1 o'clock in the morning, what do they see? They see us cooking hot dogs and say, hey, come on over, have a hot dog with us. And then that is all that we do. We don't try to convince them to just saying this. We don't try to convince them, oh, let me talk to you about Jesus. No, we just hang out with them and we give them a hot dog. And when they ask who we are, then we'll say, well, we're from the Experience Church. And they'll say, why are we doing this? And the answer is because we love our community. And we don't want people driving while they're still drunk. And so give them a little bit of time to eat a hot dog, have a drink, hang out, chat with us for a little while, and hopefully sober up a bit before they go home. So, Dan, that I have I think that's a brilliant street ministry. However, people that stand up and condemn people from a soapbox, I have very little respect for. And Shomer says the jury is out on whether or not there's intelligent life on this planet. Very true. All right, so now apparently we have a special guest who's going to call in just a second here. It's going to take me a second to get it set up. And so I gotta wait for that person. Hello, special guest. Give me just a second before you say anything. I thought I saw your video, but is it on? There it is. Okay. Let me add source. Screen. Sorry, I was not prepared. There we go. We got Mr. Chair Life.
I'm live, buddy. It's Berto Prey 5. Of course, I can't see any comments because I'm in Skype. But wanted to say hello to everybody. Yes, I am outside in beautiful Caroga. It's
yes. Is that why the sky is like completely gray because you're in Caroga? You got all that nasty chemicals.
There's blue skies here in Caroga. The sun is coming out. The trains are moving on time. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful day here in Caroga. I just wanted to stop in, say hello to everybody. I am out in the brisk January air. Beautiful day.
Brisk. It's like 70 degrees here.
I guess this is doing shit. I'm sorry.
Well, cussing
Wow,
on my
it's windy.
religious stream. What a jerk. Okay.
So my earphones not working.
So his
Oh my God. We are under a wind advisory. I think I'm getting the full blast of the 50-mile-an-hour winds. Let's turn. I don't know if this helps. Maybe the wind will be at my back. Now I can't see anything in the camera. Wow. So yeah, hi anybody. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Bird Opry 5 while he is out in the Carogan? You know, he's saying what a beautiful day in Caroga it is
Holy
while he's
shit.
having to hold his hat on, cussing up a storm because
Oh my God.
I hear things blowing around. Can you hear me, Bird?
That's a Kurdistani orphan.
Wow. They're killing orphans.
It just blew by. It's okay, yes, the mine is that way. That's the way to the mine. You're headed in the right spot. The wind will take you.
Yosef says it's great to see you outside. And I have to say, you always seem brighter when you're outside. I don't mean just because you got the sunlight on you, but you just seem to have a big smile on your face, like you just love being outside.
It's funny because I kind of love being inside, but it's a change.
Maybe it's because you're trapped inside that you like being outside. Like I'm an indoor kind of guy myself. Like I prefer to be inside over outside, but if I couldn't leave the house, then being outside would be more fun.
I think I like being outside because it makes Mamo Pray happy. I think is really the main thing, because
John DeMarco,
to be honest, it's not doing much for me. I mean, listen, if there were people, you know, if I was being chased by like at the carnival, that would be something. But there's no funnel cake. There's no ladies. There's really not a hell of a lot of reason to be out here, except to get some vitamin D. And I mean D, not what you think I mean.
I didn't say anything, man. This is my Rational Roundtable stream. I'm nice on this stream. I don't know what.
That's right. Let us pray.
So Yosef says it's great to see you outside. Mr. Mile or John DeMarco points out that the Caroga weather control must be broken down, which I will take credit for that. And if I have time, perhaps later we'll break down some more of the Carogan equipment this afternoon.
I downloaded Just Cause 3.
I saw that,
but it's nothing like what you showed. I don't go to islands. I'm like in the freaking Mediterranean doing stuff.
You see, that's the funny thing, because well, Just Cause 3 is in the Mediterranean.
Well, what's the one you were showing? What's the one you were playing?
I played 2 of them online. The Just Cause 3 is the one that I started with, and the most recent is Just Cause 4.
Oh, you started with Just Cause 2?
No, I started with Just Cause 3. I played.
Okay, but you started and you were like going island to island, destroying things with red.
There's a bunch of islands on the Just Cause 3 map.
But I didn't get there. I'm not at islands.
Well, how long have you been playing the game?
3 days, but not. I didn't get far any time. Okay. It keeps resetting.
Have you tried zooming out on the map?
I didn't know there was a map.
Okay, yeah. When you does it look like you're on the coast?
Yeah, I'm on the coast, okay. But you were like going through look like South America.
No, you're right. It's the Mediterranean. It is the Mediterranean, but I'm pretty sure. But but it is a chain of islands. You just don't realize it.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'll take your word for it.
Now, Mr. Miles says you always look excited to be outside. Kind of like when you take your dog outside.
Yeah, well, Mamo Pray takes Sassy out. But honestly, I don't think there's going to be enough time today because I am freezing.
And Aberjam wants to know, how often do you go outside?
Not often. When was the last time I did a chair life? That's probably the last time I was outside.
Since you've been streaming and stuff, have you basically every time you've gone outside done a chair life?
I would say probably all but once.
Okay.
I think there might have been one time I didn't do a chair live.
Bradley says the sunlight gives the vitamin D helps you sleep better. Well,
I get my vitamin D in pill form.
yeah, pill form. That's what he calls it.
I probably wore a jacket.
Trek 95 says making Mama Pray happy is a good thing.
It is. That is true. That is.
Let's see. And Mama Pray typed into the chat, he only gets out when he does chair life, not often. She's using your account, though. So just, I hope you clear the browsing history on your computer, because Mama Pray's on it.
Hi, Mama Pray. Now YouTube or Skype, YouTube. I guess Skype is telling me there's a poor connection.
Well, so far you're doing fine.
Okay, good.
Stromer says it's good to see the great dictator out surveying his empire. Yeah, all 300 square feet of it. Don't worry, the weather machine should be down in the next week or two. Let's see. Peter says he was live earlier. I did not know that, Peter. I shouldn't, but I was in bed.
All these blasted Kurdistani cars are coming by. I can't hear you.
Well, that's good. Mr. Miles says that you're only outside to oil the street so he can watch more cars crash.
Honestly, I'm way too close to these cars. I hope there is not an accident right now.
So we may
the
get to
sun's
see
coming out, but if I turn to it, I'll be in the wind.
So we may get to see Bird's death live on a stream.
Oh, don't say that. Mama Pray's probably crying right now.
All right, Mama Pray, that was only a joke, and nobody wants Bird to die. Trek
Of
is
course
saying,
not. I'm half your channel content.
what are you talking about?
Come on, your opening, your closing, half your super chats.
Well, that's why I'm working on a new opening, actually, that won't include you.
Oh, who's the next victim?
Piano
Mr.
Dean.
Miles?
Have you seen Piano Dean's channel?
I have not. I've heard of him.
Yeah, well, he's been on a couple of your streams that I've seen. So Piano Dean is actually a professional musician. He's been playing. He plays at a. Huh?
Sinatra?
No, he does. I think he said he does like 5,000 different cover songs. I don't know if he does any Sinatra. Piano Dean, if you're still here, Bird would like to know if you do Sinatra. And of course, you'll make him very happy if you sing him a Sinatra song. Sci-Fi Nation says, greetings, Rational Roundtable, Bird of Prey, Joe. And
shit, the wind. The wind is coming. Oh, no.
See, the weather machine.
No. Oh, my God. I gotta get back inside. I'm sorry.
That's... yeah, that weather machine is doing
here.
all sorts of wonders for you, isn't it?
No, this is crazy. Wait, hold on before you go. Let me see if my chair still works. It does.
Oh, wait, real quick before you... Piano Dean says... Can you hear me, Bird?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, Piano Dean says he does do Frank Sinatra, and he'll do a... He said he'll do a parody of That's Life called Bed Life.
Called Bed Life?
Yeah, so he'll do his own version of That's Life. Call it, yeah.
I used to walk, but now I don't. It's Bed Life.
He says
I like it.
That's Life is his favorite Sinatra song to play.
Very cool. Piano Dean, I'm gonna subscribe and I'll message you or I'll comment on something.
Yeah,
he
is actually very talented. You should check out his channel. And
everybody said great things about him.
Yeah. And as a shameless plug, anybody, if you happen to be in South Carolina, I believe it's in Myrtle Beach, is where the bar is. Piano Dean, if you want to put the name of that place in the chat, you certainly can. And you should look him up and let him know that you're one of the turds or the evil Kurogans, and I'm sure he'll do a request for you or something. I don't know. I don't know if they do requests at the bar, but
Rogan is the proper anthem too.
no, Kurogans are evil. Peter says I tweeted GTA Vice. Oh, so I guess Peter did a live Grand Theft Auto live stream.
I missed it. I got to it like 5 minutes after it ended.
Oh, man.
I have it up on my computer because I couldn't comment on it because I am assuming YouTube was still processing it by the time I got there. But yeah, we had a weird morning because I was getting ready to come out, which was unusual. And I did. I saw Peter. I saw the stream. I watched a few minutes of it. I went to the end. It looked like it went well, but I missed it, which I'm sorry, Peter.
But why would you get Just Cause? I don't understand why you would get that, considering Just Cause is all about taking down an evil dictator, aka you.
No, in my version, we clearly are taking down Kurdistan.
But I'm not a dictator.
Yeah, yes, you are.
I'm the duly elected president of Kurdistan.
Yeah, that's what all dictators claim, that they're duly elected.
And we all bow down before our queen.
We also found out what?
I said we all bow down to our queen, Mrs. Anti-Tracker.
Yeah, you see, you're married to the queen, and yet you claim you're duly elected. That just seems a little suspicious to me.
Well, she's such a beloved queen that when she endorses me for president, everybody votes for me.
See, I don't even pretend that I'm endorsed by some queen. What happened in Karoga?
Well, that's not true. Didn't Freddie Mercury actually endorse you?
No, we don't. Freddie Mercury's dead, long dead.
Right, but he endorsed you before you got rid of him.
Declared me emperor for life. You're breaking up. All I'm hearing stuff is about how great Frank Sinatra is.
So, Joseph suggests that you put some sails on your chair.
No sails.
That would be hilarious, though.
I'm already freaking out.
Richie Poole says, "Bird of Prey, Mama Fry, we pray we got your card. You're so welcome, and thank you for all you do for Bird and all of us." Yeah, Mama Prey is freaking awesome, and so I will poke fun of Bird all day long, but Mama Prey is awesome. She deserves to be considered a saint.
She does. She does. She definitely does.
Darth Maul says there is absolutely no fear that you will blow away. I think that's a comment about you.
There's no fear what?
That you'll blow away.
That's probably true, but it's like the wind is blowing so hard, it's hard to breathe.
Yeah, that's probably the same storm we got hit with yesterday.
You sent storm.
Yeah, for us though, it was. We actually had tornado warnings in the area. We didn't have any right where we live, but the winds were gusting at like 60 miles an hour.
Yeah, I believe it.
Piano Dean says, "Thank you. I'm humbled." What for me? Look, you play the piano incredibly well. You've got a good singing voice.
Mama Pray, I'm heading in, Mama Pray. I don't know if you can hear this.
Yeah. Thank you all so much, says Mama Pray, to everybody saying the nice things. So you're gonna sign off then, I assume, or are you gonna let us see your process of?
Can you sign me off, Anti-Tracker? Because I don't want to raise my arm.
Oh, I see how you are. No problem.
Take care, all.
Have a good one, Bird.
Cups locked.
All right, there we go. So, Bird of Prey, since he was going outside, he wanted to join the stream for a few minutes, which was very nice. Averjam says it's been 6 months since the last chairlight. I didn't know it was been that long. Great kite flying weather. Seems like the wind would be a little too strong for kite flying, but yeah. You're not a traitor, and yes, Miss Sandtracker is the queen, of course. Queen Nerfer Trekker? Wow, I'm not sure what that means. By your logic, you're basically like Uncle Adolf, duly elected. Well, no, you see, Uncle Adolf, Well, I don't know where I don't know. Actually, I don't follow history, so I don't know if the elections in Germany at that point were rigged or anything. Darth Maul happy he gets out. Bird, yeah, you know what? I don't care what Bird says. He does always look happier when he's outside, and I do think it's because he's like a bird in a gilded cage, right? He loves his house and everything, but he is trapped in that house most of the time. So when he gets out, it's a big deal to him. And Mama Prey is saying thank you. You are more than welcome, Mama Prey. You are a great lady for, you have sacrificed so much and done so much to help take care of Joe. And, knowing Joe as well as I do, which I know isn't that well, but I've got to know him a little bit over the last year and a half or so. And he's told me all about some of the stuff that you do for him. And so thank you, because a lot of us wouldn't have someone there for us like you are there for him. Okay, thank you. So that was Mr. Miles was pointing out that my dyslexia wasn't quite kicking in, that it was Nefertiti turned into, tried to make Titi into Trekker, Nefertec Trekker. Queen Nefertiti Trekker, yes, and their Aberjam just put that in there. As an Egyptian queen. So I'm sure she would take that one. Nefertiti Trekker. Actually, I would just say Queen Nefertiti Trekker. Or Nefertiti Trekker. Because Nefertiti Trekker, well, I don't know. We'll have to ask Mrs. Ann Trekker how she wants that. Darth Maul says, yes, he was saying Nefertiti Trekker. Yes. It just didn't register with my stupid dyslexia. I'd be happy too if I was stuck inside 95% of the time. Exactly. That's the thing. Like, I like being indoors, but if I was stuck indoors, then yeah, we always, it's kind of a funny thing about human nature. We tend to crave that which we cannot have. So it's like right now I keep thinking about how much I would love to go hiking in the woods because I can barely walk, and I used to go hiking in the woods, but at the time I would be like, oh, geez, we're going hiking again. Now it's like, man, I wish I could go hiking. So, yeah, just one of those things. I understand what it's like to not be able to go outside and have to stay in the lot. You see, I've been like that for these last few months, and it's honestly, the going outside thing isn't what's bothering me. It's just, I just hope and pray there's a time when I can just go through, have a day without pain. That's all I want. Queen Trekker TT. Yeah, Queen Trekker TT. I think that actually does work better. Trekker TT. But we'll have to ask Mrs. Anti-Trekker. It's ultimately up to her. If you keep saying Nefertiti Trekker, it sounds like a train rattling. Nefertiti Trekker. Nefertiti Trekker. If we all pull our resources and effort, we could fuse a Jeep chassis to a hospital bed for Joe. I think that would be awesome. And I think Joe would think that was awesome too. Nefertiti and her husband were only known for a religious revolution which they worshipped one god only, a teen. I wonder if that's why they went for her in this for this stream. I doubt it, but that's. But I mean, Nefertiti was also known for being in a relationship with Mark Anthony. Geo Pin says, "Why are you in pain, friend?" Whoa, man, that's a story and a half. But more or less, the root cause of the pain is, as far as throughout the body, is arthritis, and which sucks because I'm not that old to have the level of arthritis that I have. However, it's been the arthritis pain in the last 2 months has been exacerbated by sleep deprivation. And this is something I learned from my doctor just the other day, is that the sleep deprivation will actually intensify the pain from arthritis. I cannot take arthritis medication because I had a kidney infarction way back whenever, like 2011. And if you have a kidney infarction, you can't take anti-inflammatory drugs, and typical arthritis treatment is anti-inflammatories. Think ibuprofen. I can't take ibuprofen. And then on top of all this, so then I also have a herniated disc in my back, which was driving me crazy. But because of the arthritis on my knees, I couldn't walk straight. So they decided to do a knee replacement, and that surgery kind of got botched. And so, well, the surgery itself worked fine. That knee is probably the least painful part of my body at this point. But due to some nerve damage, I can't use that leg efficiently. So now I have to walk around with a cane. So that's that's the short version of what I've been through. But Gio, thank you for asking. And I try not, I know I do too much, but I try not to bitch about it too much, but man, it sucks. So what were you trying to sabotage in Space Engineers during Bird Stream yesterday? I was not trying to sabotage anything in Space Engineers I didn't know it was Birds playing Space Engineers. I've been actually working on destroying the Kurogan weather machine. And if I manage to get the video I'm working on done at an early enough time, I will do a live stream later today where we will work on destroying the weather machine. Average Jab says, getting back on track, biblical marriage is the act of procreation alone and lifelong commitment. Everything else was added by mankind along the way. Well, here's the thing. Yes and no. Biblical marriage is not necessarily about the wedding contract. It's not necessarily about the ceremony and all that, but it's not just the act of procreation. It's much more than that. And the lifelong commitment, because if the Bible does speak very heavily as to how married couples are to behave. There is a guideline to how to have a biblical marriage. And it's more than just being committed to each other and only having sex with that person. Oh, you're right. That was Cleopatra, not Nefertiti. I'm sorry. Thank you, Miles. My brain is a little fried right now. But yeah, so biblical marriage is about the wife voluntarily and joyfully submitting to her husband, and the husband voluntarily and joyfully loving his wife the way that Christ loved the church, which is not an easy thing for most people to do. It's a sacrificial love. And I've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. One of the best examples I give is that in the battle for the remote control, right, then the husband should always have the remote because the wife submits to the husband. However, the husband should always put on whatever show she wants to watch. So while he has control, he must put her needs ahead of him. Which means that when you hear people say, well, you have to have sex with me because the Bible says submit, that's correct, but only if you read half of the story. So it is very important to do both sides of that. And one way I've told people when I've known young guys that were getting ready to get married and stuff, I would say this, and this is treat her like a queen and she will treat you like a king. Let's see. Mage says, I take combination of naproxen, sodium, and CBD hemp oil for my rheumatoid arthritis. I've tried CBD. It does absolutely nothing for me. I have tried the other ingredient of that same plant when I visited states where that particular remedy is legal, and it works wonders. Unfortunately, it's not legal where I live. And so I hope and pray that that becomes legal in this state relatively soon, because the only time I was ever really pain-free in the last decade was when we were visiting my daughter in Oregon. I saw you log in at Steam, snitched on you with a pop down on the corner by the clock. What? Huh? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So I no idea what you're... Sci-Fi Nation? I have no idea what you're talking about. T-Berg says 50 Shades of Jesus. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I agree about your definition of marriage relationship. I was referring to the act of getting married. Biblical precedent does not require ceremony. Yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, I mean, you can look at how marriage is practiced in the Old and New Testament. There generally was a ceremony and a contractual relationship there. But that wasn't the point of it. Like, obviously, Adam and Eve didn't have a wedding ceremony. The husband drives the car, but the wife chooses the destination. That's actually, yes. But the husband should also already know, and this is part of loving your wife the way that Christ loved the church. If you know your wife, if you pay attention to your wife, then you should already have an idea of where she might want to go. Now, sometimes there might be a few choices, and that's one thing. And sometimes, I will be honest with you, and I know that Mrs. Anti-Trekker, you guys know, I think she's the greatest, but the things that I annoy her with are things that other women would kill to be annoyed by. For example, when we go out to eat, I always want her to make the choice. I'm always asking, what are you in the mood for? What can you eat? And stuff like that. And, sometimes she's like, oh, come on, I don't care. But that's part of that sacrificial love. When we're watching TV, what would you like to watch, babe? And even though, and so sometimes that does get annoying. So she'll say, well, I want you to pick, right? And so, I will pick sometimes, but I like to know that I'm serving her well, that whatever it is that she wants, that I'm providing for her. And, but there are lots of family, of married couples that will fight, like if the guy wants to watch his game and the woman wants to watch, I don't know, Pride and Prejudice, and it turns into a big fight, right? And so that's not the kind of fight we have around here. Sounds a little like something Odo describing relationships in Deep Space Nine's run. I don't remember that. My grandfather always told my grandmother, you make the living worthwhile, I'll make the living. There you go. Mr. Miles says, let's bring up an old topic of morals and laws. Disobeying the law is immoral. I'm curious how you handle conflicting laws on the state and federal level, such as cannabis. That is an interesting one. However, actually, I don't see the conflict like you do. Because here's the thing about cannabis and the federal law. Federal law deals with interstate commerce. So, it'll be illegal to transport cannabis across state lines. However, what goes on within the borders of that state falls into states' rights. And that's why you can have some states where it's now legal and some states where it's illegal. And as far as the federal government is concerned, it's illegal. But once the federal government, and I think they will eventually, once the federal government removes those laws from the federal books, then it opens up the floodgates, because now it's no longer illegal to go to another state and purchase it and bring it home. However, in your state, it may be illegal to possess it. And so you're going to end up with more pressure on those states to legalize it. They may not legalize distribution. They may not legalize, all sorts of stuff. But they're going to probably have to legalize possession. What is your take on how sexuality, even in marriage, has become materialistic and contractual? Consent seems to be the only thing that matters in relationships in the woke crowd. You see, that's the problem. Sex is no longer the meaningful thing that it should be, right? Sex is not an important thing. It's just something that's fun, something that is, great and all that, but it's not an emotional connection between two people. And as such, that gives rise to more and more, like, here's the thing, if there's no emotional connection, then that's when you end up with this thing, well, I didn't really say yes. How the hell do you have sex with someone who doesn't want to have sex with you? Or isn't into it, so to speak, right? That doesn't make any sense. Not to me. But it does make sense to a lot of people, because a lot of people, sex is just something to do. It's not that important. And so, yeah, there are people out there that on a regular basis will have sex with people they don't even like, right? That they don't even know. And because it's just something to do. And so now, after the fact, especially for the women, they can now claim that they were raped if, they decide they don't like this guy. And by the way, the Bible warns about that too. Jeff Franklin says, I've found when giving a woman I love the choice, they don't want that. I know that's the ironic thing. But but that's also, it's a certain level of grace, because the woman wants to please you, you want to please her. And so, and I know but you got as the guy, you still then, if she wants you to make the choice, and I struggle with this, I do, because when she pushes it back to me, I'm horrible about that. But when she gives you the choice, then you should choose what you believe would be best for her. Yes, the ceremony is historical, but an historical man-made institution allow for litigations. Is that a bad thing? No, but in God's eyes, it's not necessary. Right. Well, and divorce is addressed in the Bible. God does not like a divorce, but he allows for it because he understands that there are situations where the marriage simply needs to be dissolved. Now, our pastor at our church has said that the only times that he will ever endorse divorce is in cases of abuse, or if one of the people is a severe drug addict or irreconcilable infidelity. And that's pretty much it. And I say irreconcilable because he does believe that if one person in the relationship is unfaithful, it can be salvaged. It can be very difficult, but it depends on the attitudes of both people involved. Steam said you started playing Space Engineers, and also employers. Really? It said I'm not playing Space Engineers? I haven't played Space Engineers in, quite a while. The only thing Steam should say I'm playing is Just Cause, as far as recently. And, no. You know what it was, Sci-Fi? I was trying to get Space Engine to load, because I use Space Engine for Starfields and stuff like that when I'm making videos. And I was having a lot of trouble with it, and it kept loading and crashing and loading and crashing. I'm still working on it. I tried to reinstall it, but I don't know if it finished reinstalling it. So it wasn't Space Engineers, it was Space Engine. Also, employers can still make bags of male organs and not employ people taking weed even with a medical card. Yeah? True. Mr. Miles says, the feds want to shut down pot shop, and sometimes they do, and they will. State can't stop them. Right, but that's and that's a weird thing, because the feds, I think, is overstepping their boundaries, their constitutional rights. And so in that case, Mr. Miles, I would say that you have an instance of the federal government violating the law. Kind of like when they did I told you guys about this before, Operation Candy Crush here in Rutherford County, the county in which I live, where they literally raided and shut down dozens of CBD stores, and CBD is legal in this state. And because the sheriff didn't understand the difference between CBD and pot. Darren says, remember when you couldn't transport or sell Coors beer east of the Mississippi? Eastbound and down, baby. I did not know about that one. But I did not live east of the Mississippi at any time in my life until 6 years ago. Tennessee, well, no, I take that back. I was in Alabama when I was in the Army. Tennessee isn't going to legalize, even if the feds do. You're lucky Tennessee isn't a dry state. Actually, I would not bet on that resolute. Tennessee is a little more liberal than you give it credit for. And I say that even though I'm not a liberal myself, unfortunately, the Southern evangelical Christian crowd are the last people to be convinced of the benefits of marijuana. But as far as Tennessee is concerned, Nashville is actually an extremely liberal city, not to the point of San Francisco or Portland, Oregon, but it's a liberal town. Memphis is a moderately liberal town. Murfreesboro, where I live, is a moderate town. And those are the three biggest cities. There's also Knoxville, which I don't know much about. And so there is a significant amount of moderates and liberals in this state. And they have actually gone to the Senate, the state Senate and state legislature several times trying to legalize. So far, it hasn't been successful, but each time I think it gets a little closer. And we have CBD in this state, which I'm kind of surprised about that, to be honest with you. But I think that I think it's only a matter of time. And as far as Tennessee being a dry state, are you kidding? Jack Daniels much? Tennessee can be savior of the republic. Ditch Mitch. Okay, not sure what you mean there. What does she choose? But does she choose what is best for you when she picks? Well, depends on what her mood is, I guess. Reportedly, fewer and fewer men are sleeping around for exactly the reasons you stated, and ironically, women are beginning to complain about it. Well, here's the thing. I think that nobody should be sleeping around. Weed is legal in D.C. The Metro Police don't bother people, but if a Fed LEO rolls through that same neighborhood, then that Fed will bust the peeps using the Metro ones. Well, yeah, and that's the problem. You see, the federal government does not really have the right to do that. But what they try to do, and unfortunately, this is what the federal government does over and over and over, and it drives me freaking crazy. People talk about Roe versus Wade, the abortion, the big landmark abortion decision from many years past. So, do you know why the Supreme Court of the United States said abortion must be legal? Is it because of a woman's right to choose? No. Is it because it's a health care issue? No. They did it under the guise of right to privacy. That is a load of stinking crap. I'm sorry. Abortion, that would be like, that's stupid. But this is what the government does over and over and over, is they will do all these mental gymnastics to try and say, oh, it ties into this line in the Constitution. So, for example, with Obamacare is an unconstitutional act because it puts a new tax on people in order to which you have to pay if you don't have health care, right? That was the whole health care punishment part of it. Or if you don't have health care, you are punished by paying additional taxes. And then what they put in the actual legislation is that these taxes will be considered fees. Think about that for a moment. They're saying these are taxes, but we're just going to pretend they're fees. Why do they do that? Because imposing a new tax was illegal like this. However, imposing a fee is not. And the Supreme Court bought it. That's just the nature of the government that we live with. They are, and so, yeah. I was having a discussion with my wife about the different kinds of intimacy. How many of us find it difficult between the psychic and the emotional and what trouble it brings? A lot of people struggle with it. A lot of people struggle with intimacy. And do you know why? Because people prefer, they just don't have, that, I do think it comes back to sex a lot, is that sex is the most intimate thing in the universe, but not anymore. Now it's just something to do. I will always give my wife the choice in everything. She often tells me I need to choose and tell her what we're doing. I struggle with that, especially when I'm not sure what she will enjoy. Me too. Average says, space engineers, your console poppers have to make do with Astroneer. Good game, though. Never heard of that one. Resolute says Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has bourbon. Tennessee has whiskey. Smokey and the Bandits plot revolved around the fact that that if you transport Coors beer east of the Mississippi, you'd be hit with a bootleg charge. I did not know that. I've never seen Smokey and the Bandit. Never cared about it. Little boy, I know some people think that's horrible. A little boy died in my town last year. He could survive if he was allowed to take an illegal drug that has a big % medical chance of working, but legal procedures took too long. That's really sad. And that's another problem. We do need to the FDA needs to be streamlined. I do believe it's actually illegal in the U.S. for the federal government to enforce drug and alcohol laws. Prohibition was a state issue. It is why you can't import whiskey. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. As far as the federal government has the right, the constitutional right, to regulate interstate commerce. But then what they do is they very loosely define what is interstate commerce. And so they'll say, well, wait a minute, in order to plant that weed, you had to buy those grow lamps, and those grow lamps were manufactured in another state, and therefore it's interstate commerce, so you're under arrest. That they do crap like that. I believe your area is more liberal than people realize because California is more conservative than people realize. There is a lot of country in California, but the cities get the attention. Well, generally speaking, Miles, cities are... people think it's a north-south thing or that there's like Midwest and coast. It's true that like when you look at the Electoral College map, the coasts always vote for the Democrats and the Midwest and South vote for the Republicans. That's pretty much a given. But that has nothing to do with the actual divide. The actual divide is rural and urban. The more urban you live in an area, the more liberal it is. The more rural it is, the more conservative it is. And that's why the Central Valley of California is very conservative. However, Los Angeles, San Francisco are very, very liberal. But what happens is in some states, such as California, the population base of Los Angeles and San Francisco is well in excess of half the population of the state. And therefore, those two cities dictate to the state what policy is. Same thing with Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon, that one city is more than half the population of the state of Oregon. And that's why Oregon is a liberal state. It's not because people in Bend, Oregon are particularly liberal. It's because the people in Portland are particularly liberal, and Portland is more than half the population. When you look at states like Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, the interesting thing about those states is that the cities are smaller and the rural areas are more expansive. There are more people living in rural environment than city environments in these states. That's why they vote Republican. Now, some of these, like, for example, with Tennessee, you have Nashville is growing, right? You have Memphis, which has already been a fairly decent-sized city, right? And as they grow, the liberal influence of the state increases. But yeah, and so that's the thing. I grew up in California, I know. And I grew up on a ranch in California. So I also know that most of the people, my parents were very, very liberal, but most of the people I knew were not. We had to go to state, Senate, and House here in Michigan several times before being able to get it on the ballot and voter initiative. Yeah, it may take a while, but I think it'll happen. I think eventually it'll be legal in all 50 states. Especially once it crosses that threshold where more than half the states have legalized and the federal government finally lets it go, then the other states are going to follow suit just because they're not going to be able to enforce the law as it is. Government really do not like drugs, and they will keep saying no. Medical professionals, scientists show it may work. People have more government and places will be lenient. Well, here's the thing. I think here's the reason for the fight. The fight has nothing to do with the morality of marijuana. It has nothing to do with the morality of taking drugs for recreational use. It has to do with one thing and one thing only, and this is for the Democrats as well as the Republicans. And it's called lots and lots of money from the pharmaceutical industry. Because I will tell you that had this particular substance been legal in Tennessee, I would have spent hundreds of dollars less in pharmaceuticals last year. So absolutely, it's the pharmaceutical industry that is the reason that it's held up. It has nothing to do with morality. It has nothing to do with philosophy. It's just about money. Jeff says, it's funny though, the Obamacare law is still on the books, but the penalty for not having health insurance is now zero. Yeah. And that's kind of stupid. I personally think the Obamacare law is a hot mess. The beagle has landed, says Bird of Prey, back in bed. That's good. That's a good way to say it. Dan says, song quotes, maybe tomorrow the good Lord will take you away. Now that's from Aerosmith, Dream On. Okay, I did not know that. Sci-Fi Nation, Roe v. Wade, landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision ruled the 1965 case of Griswold, Connecticut, which established the right to privacy involving medical procedures. Yes. But that has nothing to do with the legality of the procedure. And so they use the right to privacy to basically just skirt around it. And the real issue with abortion is not privacy. The issue with abortion is simply the question, is an unborn child a human being? You have to answer that question. If the answer to that question is no, then abortion is fine. If the answer to that question is yes, then abortion is manslaughter. And even so, now that doesn't mean that abortion can never be performed, because of course, if a woman's life is endangered, well, then guess what? Self-defense. You could probably stream Smokey and the Bandit from one of your streaming services, the biggest comedy ever at one point. It's also interesting to see what was funny back then. Yeah, but you know what? I don't care. You know what? I got my fix of idiots and fast cars from Dukes of Hazzard. Bird of Prey says we need better judges. Indeed, we do. And you know what I need? I need a little more coffee. So enjoy this lovely treat from Bird O' Prey 5 while I get some more coffee.
Oi, it's my Aussie accent. It's the dingoes. We have to worry about the dingoes and the roos. The dingoes and the roos, they fight. And the shrimp fall off the Barbie. And in Tasmania, they're all cousins. The cousins marrying each other. Tasmania is what you Americans would call Alabama or Mississippi, but that's our Tasmania. They're all effed up down there, and you think Foster's is Australian beer, but it's shit? No, we drink koala beer here. That's the good beer.
Okay. You know, the funny thing is, if you're not a subscriber of Bird of Prey 5, that is a typical stream from Bird of Prey 5. So if you imagine that for like 2 hours or so, that's a Bird of Prey 5 stream. Abortion was pushed by the Democratic Party in the 50s and 60s with the unspoken intent on limiting African American population. It was heavily pushed amongst the populace. Oh yeah. And in fact, the founder of Planned Parenthood was a straight up eugenicist. So yeah. Saturday the 13th, it'll be true in June. Hashtag wrong shirt. Well, sorry. That's what I had. One reason why I had to stay in a lot was because certain types of men think that you're looking at them, they will get violent and beat you up. You had to stay in for protection. Okay. Well, I don't know, like, why that was a problem for you particular, but because I'm not sure why. Second reason for having to stay in a lot is medical. Do you think there should be better laws on bullying? Yes and no. When I say that, here's the thing. Assault is a serious crime and should be treated as such, right? And if somebody is guilty of assault, they should serve some significant jail time. That being said, saying you're fat on Facebook is not bullying. That's being a dick, but it's not bullying. And I get so tired of people basically trying to make cyberbullying this big thing when, I'm sorry, but you know, if cyberbullying was really that bad, then I should be in jail for half of what I said to Bird earlier when he was on the stream, right? And the Bird should be in jail for half the things he said, well, for more than half of the things he says on his live streams. So we should all be in jail if cyberbullying was real. Heck, just from the things I've said about Rian Johnson in my review of The Last Jedi, guilty of cyberbullying. There's a movement to get corporate money out of politics and give the government back to the people. It's wolfpack.org if any U.S. viewers are interested. Well, I've never heard of Wolfpack specifically, but I will tell you, you're never going to get corporate money out of politics. It's not going to happen because you can't. The problem is that the Supreme Court has ruled on this. Companies giving money is protected speech, just like individuals giving money is protected speech. And so you can't just say, okay, it's illegal to give candidates money now, unfortunately. It's actually wolfpack.com, and Bird of Prey, you're right. When people lay down and give up, that's when it's wrong nowadays. If this country's people are freaking fight back. Well, yeah, apathy is a massive problem in the United States. Not just apathy, but also ignorance, right? Most people kind of fall into three camps. You have your ideologues, your far left and far right nut jobs that, you know, Trump is the Antichrist if you're far left, and Obama was the Antichrist if you're far right, right? You got those nut jobs, right? Then you have the majority of your voting public, which are just completely ignorant, and they don't really know, and most of them just vote for the person based on whether they have an R or D by their name. You have a small percentage of those people that actually do research and stuff, but that's a small percentage. Then you have the apathetic, right? The people who really just don't care. And unfortunately, that is the majority. Darren says, okay, just read the plot of Smokey and the Bandit on Wikipedia. Well, maybe I'll do that one of these days when I have nothing else to do. My aunt once said, unborn children and cloning raise the same question. Do they both have souls, and when are they seen as living beings? Talk about a strange argument. Actually, I don't think that is the argument, because here's the thing. Do they have souls? That is a theological discussion. That is not a political discussion, and it is not an appropriate discussion for a law, okay? Because what if you're discussing this with an atheist? Well, the soul doesn't exist. Well, then I guess abortion's okay, right? No. What you have to, in my humble opinion, what you have to establish first and foremost is, when is a person a person? Now, if you want to establish that a person is a person at the moment of birth, fine. If that's where but you're going to have to demonstrate that to me. You're going to have to demonstrate why is it that a baby inside the womb is significantly different than a baby outside the womb. And now some people argue it's viability. Okay. That's a little bit better, but at the same time, does that mean that a person in a hospital on life support is not a person? Because a person in the hospital on life support would die without life support. So is that no longer a person at that point? And so if you argue, well, it's about stages of development. Well, does that mean a severely retarded child is not a person? Does it mean that someone born with birth defects is not a person? Obviously, nobody's going to argue that, right? But that you have to be able to clearly define it. And so is it, if it's a stage of development, then you better be really specific about what is it that the person must be able to perceive or experience to be considered developed enough to be a person. And if a person in a hospital bed on life support doesn't meet those same standards, then that is not a human being. And you might as well just chop them up and throw them away. So I want, you better have something more concrete than just viability. So now, am I pro-life? I am not. I am anti-choice. And when I say that, I mean that the only person, in my opinion, that can make the determination of whether or not an abortion is necessary is a doctor. Not a woman who just wants something done for convenience sake. And convenience, by the way, doesn't mean that it's a light thing, right? Convenience is not just, oh, golly gee, I don't want a kid today. It could be, oh my God, I'm 16 years old and I don't know how I'm going to deal with life with a child, right? But guess what? That's a matter of convenience. It's a very serious matter of convenience, but it is a matter of convenience. And I do not believe in abortion for convenience. I believe if the abortion is medically necessary, then do it. If it's not medically necessary, then don't do it. And guess what? Insurance companies for decades. I used to work for Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're in the business of determining through doctors' statements and all that what is and is not medically necessary. It's not hard to demonstrate medical necessity. However, what is hard is to say that it's medically necessary because the kid would be inconvenient. Single payer is the answer, but not realistically achievable. I think it's achievable, but first you have to establish a constitutional amendment saying that the federal government must provide health care. Because right now, there is no mention of health care in the Constitution, and yet the federal government is trying to institute health care despite the fact that it's not in the Constitution, and the Constitution itself says that if it's not in the Constitution, it is not in the purview of the federal government. Shormer says, I think Bird of Prey 5 has discovered the reason for the web-footed platypus. Cousins marrying cousins. The platypus is just a really ugly Aussie. That must be that must be it. Valor says, Wolfpack was started by the Young Turks. Not to be, anything from the Young Turks, yeah, I don't trust. What are your what that basically means then is Wolfpack is a left-leaning group. When they say get the corporate money out of politics, they just mean conservative. What are your thoughts about abortion if your wife commits adultery and is carrying another man's baby? The same as they are in any circumstance. Just because it doesn't matter who the prospective parents are. If it's a matter of convenience, then it should not be done. If it's a matter of medical necessity, then it should be. Dan says, yes, I was attacked once. Some guy thought I looked at him the wrong way. Something when I didn't. I had to stay home a lot, and I wasn't attacked again. Hope you understand. To a point. I don't understand why it happened, but I understand that it did happen. Is 1 month old viable on its own? Is that 1 month old a person? Exactly. An infant is not viable. Heck, you know what? A typical 5-year-old is not viable on their own. You drop a 5-year-old in the woods, they'll be dead in a week. Even if we establish a fetus as a person, there will still be the argument that one person doesn't have the right to use another person's body against their will. But you see, here's the thing. Parental responsibility is already in the law, right? So if you have a child, so like Joshua, right? Joshua's 19 now, but when he was 17, I was legally responsible for taking care of him. He had the right to use everything in my house against my will. So sorry, that doesn't carry any water with me. And you know what? If you do, and I understand that this is, and it's horrible and insensitive and all that, but it's true. If you don't want to be forced to have a baby, don't have sex. And before you start screaming rape, pregnancy from rape is an extraordinarily rare thing. However, in those rare cases that it does happen, well, sorry. Is it the baby's fault? No. The person who committed a violation was the rapist, not the baby. I ask because the Bible approves of abortion in the case of a wife who has committed adultery. Well, here's the thing. I'm not making a biblical case about it. All right? I genuinely do not think abortion is a religious issue. I know some people try to use the religious concept that life is sacred. Show me that in the Bible. Show me where in the Bible it says that, thou shalt not abort a child because all life is sacred, saith the Lord. And show me that, and I will take that back. But as far as I know, that's not there. Anyway, son brought you into this world. I'll take you out. Cliff Huxtable. That's right. Now Cliff Huxtable's in jail. Steven Crowder was very good pro-life arguments and has changed my mind series. Well worth a watch. I've never watched Steven Crowder. I've heard good things and bad things about him. Schomer says it's horrific, but in some European countries, they're actually arguing doctors should be able to euthanize patients if they are mentally handicapped at any age. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. If you are pro-choice, and I don't begrudge you for being pro-choice, I certainly don't. I understand there are lots of people that are pro-life and pro-choice for various reasons, but logically speaking, please tell me, what is the difference between terminating a fetus, terminating an infant, and terminating a disabled person who is completely dependent on the system? Let's see. Sci-Fi Nation says they mean all sides of it. The end goal is actually constitutional amendment. The thing that you say we need for all new federal mandates. They mean all sides of it. I'm not sure what you mean, Sci-Fi Nation. As far as they mean all sides of what. However, basically, if you're going to have the federal government do something that is not listed in the Constitution, then yes, you need a constitutional amendment. But if you're talking about the get money out of politics thing, well, then you're going to have to get rid of the First Amendment, and that ain't going to happen. Under no circumstances do I think the First Amendment should in any way be infringed upon. In the DS9 episode where Molly goes back in time, she was only 5 and lived on her own, so you're wrong. Well, in D Space Nine, she did. Well, wow, I guess that proves it. Dan says, you lose 21 grams when you're dead. Despite its rejection as a scientific fact, McDougall's experiment popularized the idea that the soul is weight, and specifically that it weighs 21 grams. I don't know the data for that, but okay. The Bible does state that you shouldn't murder. That's true. But and here's the thing. You could argue, but here's the problem, is that you could argue that abortion isn't murder if you can determine that there is that's not a person. That's why I said personhood is what's really important here. And so you cannot murder a pimple, right? You cannot murder a hair follicle. And so if, as many on the progressive left say, that the fetus is just a lump of tissue, then that's not murder. Now, I don't buy that it's just a lump of tissue. I think it's a person. But that's where the argument needs to be. Not, the rights of the woman. This is not about women's rights. Sorry, it just isn't. Will you at least agree that the physical act involved in creating life is sacred? Well, absolutely. I've talked about that before. And one of the biggest problems in our society, one of the reasons abortion is an institution into of itself, is because we don't treat it as if it's sacred anymore. It's just something to do. Crowder's Louder with Crowder show can be an acquired taste, but it's changed my mind series is very well tempered, thoughtful, and intelligent. Okay. That is an argument they're using. They say that there's no distinction between an unborn child and a handicapped person in viability, so they should be able to end their lives. Sick. Well, here's the thing. It's a logical argument. And so I'm okay with that as far as an argument. Now, what I'm not okay with is that people say, well, that's different. Why? Because that person's older. So now it's about age. The 21 grams thing doesn't account for the loss of other things such as gases escaping the body. I don't know. Like I said, Mage, I don't know anything about the 21 grams thing. Biblically speaking, killing is to take a life. Murder is to do so unlawfully. That is true. Murder is actually to kill with malice, technically. And so you could argue that abortion is never murder unless you're really mad at the fetus. When a Sith kisses somebody, do they disappear? That's a good question. Not that I know of, but not sure what that has to do with anything. Do you believe trees are alive or sentient? Well, they're certainly alive. As far as sentient, I don't believe so. And sentient, and I know different people define sentience in different ways, though. So let's look up because I always go to Merriam-Webster when I'm unsure of the definition of a term. So we're going to go to and I only, by the way, the only reason I picked Merriam-Webster is because consistency, and when I was in college, that's the dictionary I used. So sentient. Responsive to or conscious of sense impressions, aware, finely sensitive in perception or feeling. So, is a tree conscious? No. If the act of creating life is sacred, then the act that comes out of that act is sacred as well, correct? I think you could make that argument, but you could also make the argument that that's not necessarily a logical necessity. Because is a miscarried fetus sacred? That came out of that. And I'm sorry to get graphic here, but is a STD sacred? Probably not. Is a yeast infection sacred? Probably not. So, no, I don't think that that necessarily follows. Mage says, Crowder uses half-truths to argue his points. Well, like I said, I'm not going to get into... I don't know anything about Crowder. I'm not going to judge him without knowing him. The 21-gram experiment could not be replicated. Well, it's hard to find people that are willing to die for science, but I don't know. Deuteronomy 21:18 kind of shows the Bible isn't against murder. Let me see. I don't know Deuteronomy 21:18 off the top of my head, but we'll take a look at what it says just for giggles. And let's see. So you think that this verse means that the Bible's not against murder. If someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father and mother and will not listen to them when they discipline him, then the father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders and the gate of the town. By the way, this is not just 18. This is going on. This is now verse 20. They shall say to the elders, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And then verse 21, then all the men of this town shall stone him to death. You must purge the evil from among you. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. So, first, no, that has absolutely nothing to do with murder. All right, that is capital punishment. All right, and the Bible is not against capital punishment. The Bible is not even against crucifixion specifically. Nowhere in the whole crucifixion of Christ thing does it say, and by the way, it's wrong to crucify people. And in fact, one of the thieves on the cross mentions that they're getting their just desserts. So capital punishment is indeed endorsed by the Bible. Now, you could argue that, holy crap, this is like a horrible thing to be executed for. And that's because, again, most people don't take into context or take into account the full context of what they're reading. For example, the rebellious son. I know a lot of people think that they're picturing like their 10-year-old is not going to bed on time. That's not what it's referring to. The rebellious son is an adult who is rebelling against the ways of the tribe. And that the parents, because typically speaking, he's considered their son until he takes a wife and moves on. And the parents are still, he's living in their parents' tent, so to speak, until such time as he takes a wife. Remember, at that time he shall leave his parents and cleave unto his wife. You are to stay with your parents until you marry. So this rebellious son is not obeying the father and mother. Basically, he's not following the rules of the house. So they have to report it. They do not have the right to implement punishment on their own because this is their adult child. So they take it to the elders and then they stone to death. Now that's where people are like, holy crap, stoned to death for that? But you're missing out on the whole scapegoat thing, is that there's always an out when it comes to these Mosaic laws. And that is where you get the scapegoat from. So that's why you would perform a sacrifice to prevent the execution. If you cannot perform it, or if you do not do the sacrifice, then of course you would be executed. The only logically consistent starting point for life is conception. I agree. Stromer says, I'm actually pro-life at every stage, so I'm also against the death penalty. Though many deserve death, I think life in prison is a just sentence. Well, like I said, I think that capital punishment should be reserved for extreme circumstances. I'm not necessarily against capital punishment, but I'm also not for capital punishment. I think capital punishment should be reserved for those for which we are pretty darn sure that there is no chance of rehabilitation. And so if this person, for example, if you have somebody, it's kind of funny because the one way you can get out of capital punishment is if you're insane. But that's actually a reason for capital punishment, if there's no way to rehabilitate you. Sucks. Today's my birthday and I have to move out of my apartment. Oh, that sucks, Matthew. I'm sorry. Moving day is never fun. And right now, I couldn't do it if I wanted to. Another curveball for you. What are your thoughts of ending one's own life when they are severely suffering from an incurable sickness? If you're talking about, like suicide laws like in Oregon and stuff, I don't know. I'm mixed on it. My mom, when she was dying, actually considered driving up to Oregon so she could kill herself because California at the time, I don't know what the laws are now, but at the time, California did not have legalized suicide and Oregon did. However, the hospice people informed my mom at that point that, well, you have to live in the state for a certain amount of time before you can actually kill yourself with a doctor's prescription. So it wouldn't work out for her because her prognosis for life expectancy was shorter than the amount of time she would have to live in Oregon. So that didn't work out for her. Personally, okay, so there's two issues. Moral and legal, right? From a moral standpoint, I would say that I don't like it, all right? I don't. I think life is precious, even life, like, heck, I'm in pain every single hour of every single day. I would still much rather be alive than dead. And even though I know that, assuming that my theological stance is correct, and I truly believe it is, that after death, it will be a whole lot better. That doesn't mean I shouldn't cling to life and try to do as much good in the world as I possibly can before I go. So, from a moral standpoint, I would say I'm not for suicide. However, from a legal standpoint, I have no problem with it whatsoever. So, because that's something that each person has to decide. And I think a lot of it comes down to their individual belief in a higher power. Do you like Star Wars video game cheats that turns everyone into a female Twilight dancing girl? Not particularly, but unlike, I don't know why people think that the female Twilight dancing girl who was, I think that was Debbie Reynolds in Return of the Jedi. But I don't know why people think that that's so hot. I personally don't think that having two giant flappy flesh things hanging off her head makes her hot. Jeff says, now I'm depressed. I'm sorry, my friend, if I depressed you at all. Let's see. And Berta Prey says, breaking news, Turkestan executes the mentally ill. No, actually, that's Karoga eats the mentally ill, but yeah. And so Via Mike says, my only reason in being pro-choice is because I do not want the government telling me what I can and cannot do with my own body. But this is the problem. That's the core of the problem, is that, and I'm sorry, is a completely 100% BS argument, Vile. And I love you, you know that. But here's the thing, because that's what people always say. Woman has the right to choose what to do with her body. Absolutely. But guess what? That fetus ain't her body. So, yeah, the government can't tell you what you can and cannot do with your own body. But you know what? They can tell you that harming another person is illegal. And that's why we need to determine when a person is a person. But don't get me wrong, Vile. I mean, I certainly understand that particular position, but I disagree with it on a fundamental level. I'm against the death penalty because there's no such thing as a perfect system. Killing an innocent person is unacceptable to me, even if it's just 1 out of a million. I have no problem with that statement. I truly don't. I understand, and that's where I, even though I don't like the way that the system is currently set up, I do think that the death penalty should be reserved for only the most extreme cases, and that there is a higher burden of proof, that it is absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt, not a reasonable doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt that the person is in fact guilty. If there is even the slightest possibility that that person is not guilty, then no. Jeff said, you didn't depress me. Okay, good. I was worried there for a minute. Matthew says, by the way, I also have an alt account, Admiral Saval. I'm the one who sent you the webcams. Okay, I didn't know that. That's cool, Matthew. I thought you kind of talked like Admiral Saval, but I was wondering because your phraseology was very similar to him. Mr. Miles says that fetus ain't a body at all. Well, on that, I disagree. Bird of Prey says no one is a person until they start paying taxes. Done. Okay. So does that mean that welfare recipients that don't pay taxes are not people? I've known people, and by the way, I've known people that haven't paid taxes their entire life. And so are they not people? My ex has PCOS, and it irks her that so many women who choose abortion because it's inconvenient instead of putting the child up for adoption where parents who could adopt. Well, here's the biggest problem with the adoption argument, and I'm just playing both sides here, I know, but this is the honest truth. Adoption needs to be completely 100% revamped in this country. Adoption is a crime against humanity in this country. Number one, adoption should be 100% free. You should not pay for a pound of flesh. It should not cost people $10, $20, $50, $100,000 to purchase a child. That is morally reprehensible to me. That's first. Number two, the system needs to be simplified, and basically they need to stop putting out, you don't have to have 750 home visits to determine if parents should be able to adopt. You basically, I could understand if you did a criminal background check, but even then, as long as there's no violent crime in their history, then you let them adopt, period. Yeah, some of them are not going to get ideal households, but you know what? Better that they live with a family that's struggling than for them to live in an orphanage or in the foster system. Darren says, the government tells us what we can and cannot do with our bodies all the time. For example, prostitution. You can't use certain drugs. You can't eat certain foods. That's technically true. Vile says, let's take this to a sci-fi analogy. Say we have a device where one person's life force is being used to keep another alive. Would it be okay for the one person to turn off the device? Except that that's not a proper analogy because we're talking about reproduction, not artificial life extension. So that's not the same thing. And in your sci-fi analogy, it also, okay, so if we want to take the analogy to the next step, you have to understand that the one person whose life force is being used to keep the other alive volunteered for the job. And so, no, it would not be okay for them to turn off the device. And before you say, well, they didn't plan on having a kid. Well, did they have sex? Then they volunteered for the job. You know, just like when you freaking accept the terms and conditions on the latest update to Google Chrome, and buried in those terms and conditions, it says that, you know, here's what you can and can't do with the web browser. And then later on you find, wait a minute, why can't I do this? And they said, because the terms and conditions said so. Well, I didn't know. Well, you should have read the terms and conditions. Well, part of the terms and conditions of having sex is that you may have a kid. And the law says that you're responsible for that kid until their 18th birthday. Bird says babies should be auctioned. So there you go. There's the Kurogan system. Let's see. Wolfpack is trying to add the 28th Amendment to the Constitution to end corruption and restore a representative democracy. It's preposterous. It's preposterous. You think that it's only for and by lefties. I didn't say that. I'm saying that somebody said that it was put out by the Young Turks. And if the Young Turks are behind it, then yes, it is for and by lefties. And I'm sorry, Sci-Fi, if you don't believe that, you don't know the Young Turks. But that being said, what does it mean to restore our representative democracy and end corruption? Those are wonderful terms. That says nothing about what it's going to actually do. So you tell me, Sci-Fi, what is it going to actually do that will end corruption and restore our representative democracy? Tell me the specifics, and then I can tell you whether or not I think it's, you know, a good idea. But just saying it will end corruption and restore democracy, well, Palpatine said that. Remember? Well, Senator Amidala, if elected, I will remove corruption. Removing corruption means nothing. Tell me how. Shormer says, have you seen Bird Trade GTA Murder Spree stream? Of course, non-taxpayers should be shot, especially in Kuroga. Well, yeah, I have seen the Bird of Prey. Oh, I've seen at least one of the Bird of Prey GTA Murder Spree streams. You should do a Murder Spree stream today, Bird, because I love your GTA streams. But anyway. Let's see. Vile says, I agree with you there, Rational Roundtable. Adoption should be made much easier, not barred for gays, singles, etc. I agree. As long as the person demonstrates that they have the wherewithal to take care of a child, you let them have the child free of charge. And you know what? That does two things. Number one, it makes it a whole lot easier for people to adopt. Number two, it will also encourage less abortion because now the adoptions becomes more viable. Do you think free will gives us mortals the right to kill each other? Does it give you the right to? No, it gives you the ability to. Bird says, $2,000 sold to the mining companies, selling them orphans. Putting people to death is just revenge. Besides being in a cage, never to taste freedom again, this is far worse punishment than a one-time deal. Well, here's the thing. So you're saying that you want them to suffer the most? Why not torture them then? I mean, seriously, if you're going to suggest that it's better to lock him up in life in prison because it's a worse punishment, then why not torture him? Because that would be worse. And it's putting people to death, revenge or justice? Well, it depends on who's doing it. If the state impartially is doing it, then it is justice. If an individual is doing it for personal gratification, it is revenge. But there is actually reasons to not to execute. For example, if a person is a mass murderer, just throwing that out there, what happens if they escape? Do you think they're going to say, whew, well, I escaped, now I'm going to be a good, upstanding citizen? Or are they going to start murdering again? See my point? So you can actually help society by making 100% sure that this person is not going to commit the crime again. But that's why I would say that I would reserve, if I were the person having to make the choice, and I'm glad I'm not, I would reserve capital punishment for only the most heinous of crimes, because something that I would actually want to make sure to prevent from ever happening again because of the detriment to society. I don't think adoption should be free because it does prove that the person family is serious about and truly cares. It's just not just a whim, but I'm okay with finding other methods. But here's the thing. So you don't think poor people should be able to adopt? Because that's what, and I know that's not the words you said, but right now it is tens of thousands of dollars. My company that I work for will sponsor, if I wanted to adopt a kid, will pay for up to $25,000 of the adoption fees. Okay? That is crazy. There should never be a case where you're spending what is a certain livable income in some parts of this country for a year to adopt. That's stupid. That is beyond stupid. Now, if you want to say, oh, charge them $500, fine, to do the paperwork and stuff. But these tens of thousands of dollars is ridiculous. Better to live with a family instead of orphanage or foster care is something we can agree on. Hey, glad to see we can agree on something. Let's see. Babylon 5 had such a device that was used as punishment for criminals to heal others. That's interesting. What is your take on the dark money and the question of who do our politicians really serve? If we can't remove the dollar factor from politics, it means only representation from the wealthy. Yeah, we've had only representation from the wealthy for basically about as long as we've had politics. But the problem is that do I think that there's corruption in our political system? Absolutely. Do I think that many of our politicians, if not most of our politicians, are getting lots of money as bribes? Absolutely. Look at the freaking Clinton Foundation. It's a joke, right? But and the simple fact that you have all these politicians to say how humble and poor they are, and yet they're all filthy freaking rich. And I'm sorry. And while the salary of a state senator, or a federal senator or congressman is not bad, it's not, multimillionaire rich, even though that's what they almost all are. So yeah. Let's see. It is illegal to do certain sex acts in different parts of America. Well, I don't know what sex act crimes are still on the books, and not sure what the point of that is. To continue the analogy, the first person agreed to do it, but they say because of other issues, the first person changes their mind. Can they change their mind, or should they be forced to continue? Let me ask you this, Val. So, you have a kid. They're 6 years old. You didn't realize what a pain in the ass having a 6-year-old is, so you change your mind. Can you kill your kid? There's your analogy. From what I recall, Wolfpack was about getting rid of things like super PACs in politics. Then getting rid of super PACs won't do anything. That'll just make it so that it'll be distributed in another way. There's a Babylon 5 episode where a lady using an alien machine which drains life and heals other people. Okay, well, I understand that, but that's not a complete analogy to what we're talking about. Sometimes I think it would be nice to go back to the days when you had your own land property, when you had to own land or property in order to vote. Yeah. Because you had a dog in the fight. I understand that. Mage says, it means our elected officials will be more beholden to the people instead of large corporate donors. You see, that's the thing. You're living in a dreamland if you really think that getting rid of super PACs is going to do that. Because getting rid of super PACs, yes, you know what a super PAC is, right? A super PAC is just an organization that collects donations from different people and then lumps them together into one big donation. So guess what? They'll just change the name. It'll be, instead of being the Freedom of America Super PAC, it'll be the Freedom of America Donation Center. And you can donate to your favorite candidate. Just give it to us and we'll transfer it to the candidate. There, it's not a super PAC anymore because we're not collecting it and giving a single donation. We're just passing your donation along. Bam, law averted. You're not going to change a single thing by making super PACs illegal. You're just going to change the name of what they use. Heck, 20 years ago, nobody knew what a super PAC was, but they were around. Yeah, be careful when using that Google microphone. Yep. John Ford and Rational Roundtable, the Babylon 5 Life Force machine is a brilliant talking point. Lore Runner made a point that eventually they will invent crimes for criminals just to use the device. Well, that would be a problem, but that's not where we're going with it. Although, here's the thing. And this is why I'm against infant stem cell or fetal stem cell research, is what if you find a cure for cancer, but the only way to cure cancer is to use fresh stem cells? All of a sudden you have a reason to encourage abortion. And Dan says, Baby Yoda! Well, Baby Yoda is freaking awesome. But, if you know my favorite picture of Baby Yoda that I made myself, Baby Yoda drinks Starbucks blended frog. Yes, that is my own invention, Starbucks blended frog, exclusively for Baby Yoda. I never said it should be expensive. I said it shouldn't be free, but I think there should have some sort of filter. Fine. If you want to put a couple $100 as a processing fee, that's fine. But thousands? Hell no. I don't think that people that don't have a lot of money should not be able to adopt. Reasons to not have death penalty is to get wrong something like 10% of the time that we know of. Also costs more than life in prison due to the extra legal processes. Well, actually, first of all, the cost more than life in prison is a misnomer, but and I understand a lot of people believe that, but it is because of the extended legal processes. But I already said, if it's going to be a capital crime, it needs to be 100% proven, and so I think we can agree on that. So if it's wrong, it's like 10% of the time. That's because the current standard of guilt in our country to be convicted of a crime is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what's considered the standard of guilt of a criminal trial. Preponderance of evidence, which is only 51% of evidence, is the standard for a civil suit. But in a criminal trial, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, which would probably be somewhere about the 90 percentile range. That would make sense. So, if you are to convict someone and they are going to have a capital punishment, then it needs to be beyond a shadow of a doubt, beyond any doubt whatsoever. This person absolutely committed the crime, and there is no way out of it. Richie says, Baby Yoda for president. Okay. Steve Rogers says, pro all the way through the entire life for every life, all life, every life, and all life of all people. Okay. Like I said, I'm not pro-life, but I'm not pro-choice either. And that goes to both capital punishment and abortion. I don't think that we, individuals, I don't think the victims of criminals have the right to determine capital punishment. I think that should be in the hands of a judge, period. I don't think that your average person, some couple that just got knocked up, they shouldn't be able to just go to the drugstore and get an abortion pill. That should be up to a physician, period. All prisoners should have trackers implanted in a location that can't be removed easily. Keeping them behind bars is better, as it will permanently prevent the innocent from getting killed. Well, it would also be permanently prevent innocent from being killed if you executed them all. Just saying. Or just dumped them in Kuroga. That's really the best method. I think it's funny how most pro-life people I've met are pro-death penalty. Seems beyond hypocritical to me. No, it's not at all. Just because here's the thing. And like I said, I'm not pro-life, but the idea of people that are pro-life, and by the way, I also think that, if you're pro-choice and anti-death penalty, that's fine, but if you're pro-life and you're pro-death penalty, it just means that you believe that innocent life should be protected. And guess what? A murderer is not an innocent life. So there's nothing hypocritical there. Babies are not murderers. I've wondered theologically about suicide in a situation like someone who jumped to their death to avoid a burning death in the 9/11 attacks. See, I don't see that as suicide. I see that as desperation. And so if you're, behind you is a raging inferno that's going to consume you, death by fire. In front of you is a 1,000-foot drop to concrete below. What's your better odds of survival? Well, honestly, your better odds of survival are to jump. Through that, people have fallen from huge heights and just gotten incredibly lucky and survived. And so there is a small chance that you'll survive. However, caught in that raging inferno, you will be dead. So I honestly don't think there's a moral conundrum there. You're wrong about the Clinton Foundation. I think you may be thinking of the Trump Foundation. True corruption there. I don't know much about the Trump Foundation, honestly, but as far as the Clinton Foundation, no, I'm not wrong. Look at it. It is a freaking joke. And if you want to try to defend the Clinton Foundation while pointing the finger at the Trump Foundation, that just shows me that you picked your side. When you rent a house, and no offense, but that's why you also have people that'll say, well, the Trump Foundation is squeaky clean, but the Clinton Foundation. Now, I just said I'm ignorant of the Trump Foundation. It could be just as corrupt as the Clinton Foundation. I don't know. But because I've tuned out of politics the last couple of years because I'm done with all the hate. I still pay attention to what the candidates run on their platforms, but all the crap that goes on where people are accusing others of all this crap, unless somebody is convicted of a crime, I don't want to hear about it. When you rent a house or an apartment, you have to show proof of income, and it has to say a certain amount or they won't let you in. I'd be fine with something like that for adoption. Yeah, but at what are you going to put the standard at? Middle class? Upper middle class? Rich? Where are you going to put the standard? Who deserves to have a kid? The flaw with that response is the child is not dependent on the first person's life force / womb to live. The child is not dependent on the first person's life force / womb to live. Well, in utero, yes, they are, aren't they? Or am I missing something? Baby Yoda is a timeless child mentioned in Doctor Who. Well, I don't know that. I don't doubt that. I don't think there's an official Doctor Who Star Wars crossover. I've known a lot of crappy parents in my life, sadly an awful lot. Ones that just had kids for a welfare check. That kind of thing really bothers me. Well, it bothers me too. I don't like people that milk the welfare system at all. I've known people that have done it. And I don't like it at all. That being said, I don't think that if somebody is on welfare, now what you could do if you want, about the furthest I would go as far as I wouldn't do any kind of real means test as far as adoption, but I would try to make it clear to the parents you will not qualify for welfare benefits for X number of years, or just make it so that this child, if you ever apply for welfare for this child, then the state will in fact put the child in foster care immediately, and you will not get any benefits. You could do something like that. The ironic thing is that some don't realize that Wolfpack is much different than a super PAC. I'm sure it is. It sounds like it, but I don't know much about it. I don't want someone to adopt and then get on welfare because they now have a kid. Well, that's why I just said you just make it so that they can't. Even if they aren't adopting the kid to get on welfare, they can't take the kid. If they can't take care of the kid, they shouldn't have it. So define take care of. There are different levels of take care of. There are people that eat top ramen every night and they take care of their kids. There are people that have filet mignon every day and they don't. So I don't think money is necessarily the best way to measure whether a parent is taking care of their kid. It can only show that they have the means. Baby Yoda looks good. I say barbecued Ed Baby Yoda seems like it could taste good. Question is, would Baby Yoda taste like chicken or beef? I think Baby Yoda would taste more like frog. How did people in the World Trade Center get those windows open? They didn't open and they were plate glass. How did you'd have to hit the accelerator to break them? I don't know how they did it. No idea, Darren. I know you're the conspiracy theorist, but I don't know. Then their motto needs to be only innocent life matters instead of all life matters to avoid any sense of hypocrisy or confusion. Well, you talk to them. Just like, the Black Lives Matter group, they should have called their organization Black Lives Matters 2. That would have changed a lot, but unfortunately they didn't. And Vile says, you said you can't change your mind about a 6-year-old. My response is 6-year-old's not dependent on the life force machine womb of life. Okay, a 1-year-old. Or how about a baby that you're going to deliver in 2 weeks? Most states will not let you change your mind at that point. Even the most liberal of states get a little squeamish when you start talking about late-term abortion. Darren says, interesting, the Young Turks chose Wolfpack. The Kriegsmarine U-boats operated in groups called Wolfpacks too. That's true. Didn't think about that. Shormer says, I've seen good and terrible parents. Financial status had nothing to do with it. Well, that's my point, is that, and I understand what Mr. Miles is getting at. Don't get me wrong, Miles. I'm not saying that you're wrong entirely. I don't think that if you have a homeless couple walking in with their shopping cart, that you should just say, oh, here, have some kids. I get that. But at the same time, I get really squeamish about any kind of means test, because once you throw a means test on there, you're stating you're good enough or not good enough based on your income to have a child. Well, if they were just having sex, no one would stop them from having a child. When I say take care of, I mean provide for. It doesn't have to be fancy, at least good enough to make sure the kids' health are in danger of malnourishment or something. But what do you do, as far as, there are kids right now that don't eat every night? So what about them? In New York, you can abort the fetus after birth legally now. I don't know about that, but I know that in Karoga you can. Mr. Miles says, aren't 8? Aren't 8? You lost me on that one. That's by the way, I wouldn't want to add to it. Well, like I said, Miles, I understand your basic premise, and I actually agree with you as far as, like I said, I don't think a homeless couple should be able to come in and get a kid. I don't think that but what if you have a hardworking couple, but they're living at the poverty line? Aren't was a correction because I said R earlier. 8 wasn't supposed to be there. Okay, I was like, what? Okay, no problem. And so I don't know. The problem with a means test, like I said, is where do you draw the line? When do you say, well, if you make $20,000, you can have a kid, but if you make $19,500, you can't? Where do you put that line? And Rational Roundtwig is easily confused by typo corrections on what he just read. I do. I will fully admit that, because you know what? 99% of the time, I don't notice the typos because of my dyslexia. Still waiting to hear, by the way, what exactly Wolfpack is going to do. Okay, so they're going to eliminate super PACs. That will do absolutely nothing. So how else are they going to end corruption? Because you know what? That will not end corruption. Even if you could eliminate PACs and super PACs completely, even if that were possible, that would not end corruption. My 2 Cents has a good series of videos on abortion. Basically states that the fetus must be given the chance to comply with the mother's rights. Given the chance, comply with the mother's... I'm not sure what you mean by comply with the mother's rights. Autocorrect should be condemned to hell. I agree. Do you believe in TNG Up the Long Ladder that William Reichner should have killed his clone when it was stolen without permission and used? No, I thought that was wrong. I do believe that the creation of the clone was an immoral act, but the elimination of the clone was murder. Just like what I said earlier, I think that rape is a horrific and terrible crime that should be punished to the much harsher than it is. However, I think that baby did not do anything wrong. The Young Turks have a habit of choosing the wrong words. They're named after a young genocidal regime and picked a bad name for reform. Still, they have some good ideas, mostly bad, though. I've yet to... the Young Turks, I watched them a little bit when they were first growing as a YouTube channel, and I gotta say, typical liberal problem with this type of thing, with this type of format, they come across so condescending and arrogant. And I know that some people accuse me of that, Miles, but but at the same time, they were just like, so, oh, well, you know, if you vote for Republicans, you're just stupid, kind of thing, you know. So they rubbed me the wrong way from the very beginning, and I gave up on them pretty quickly. Who shot Mr. Burns? Maggie Simpson. That is correct. Again, 1-year-old not dependent, but an 8-month fetus, things get murky. Hence why I use the analogy, using sci-fi to explore complex issues. But here's the thing. A 1-year-old is 100% dependent on their parents. And so, as is a 6-year-old. All right. So just because it's not inside the mom anymore doesn't change the fact that if I just walked into your house right now, started eating your food, and demanded that you give me a bed and you give me all the basic necessities of life, you would be well within your rights to shoot me in most states. But you can't do that to your kids. They have a website. I have 200 characters to type with. You do the math and go check out their site. Sci-fi. You brought it up. You got to provide the evidence. I am not going to go research it for you. If you want to say that, hey, these guys are awesome, these guys are great because they're going to end corruption, then you got to tell me how they're going to do it. And I understand you only get 200 characters to type with. I didn't set the YouTube limitation. But you just have to be concise. For example, they will end corruption by making it so that only Democrats can be elected and that the government will only sponsor Democratic initiatives, right? There you go. I know that's not what they say, obviously, but see, that's 2 ideas in 200 letters, or in 200 characters. To end corruption require removing humanity. Yes. Truck autocorrect. Nice. There was a guy in the 9/11 trade tower that jumped. There was a fire behind him, and he knew he would not make the fall. Well, here's the thing. You don't know what he knew because he is dead. However, he had a chance. And, so I think he tried the lesser of 2 evils in his mind. And quite frankly, I probably would have jumped. Because I would rather, if I had to make that choice, I would rather go splat against the pavement and be instantaneously killed than to be burned alive. I got the impression that the clones disintegrated up the long ladder weren't alive yet. Well, then they weren't real clones, but I know I'm sure they did that just so that Riker wouldn't be a murderer. Young Turks start off pretty decent. And they went black woman crazy. Wow, black woman crazy? I think you mean Batwoman. Wow, that is like the worst autocorrect ever. Holy crap, you said black woman crazy. Unless you did that on purpose. During the Trump election, way past the deep end, they were already getting bad, but wow. No, they were bad before the Trump election. The only reason you didn't see it as much is because I know you lean to the left, and don't get me wrong, if they lean to the right, I wouldn't have seen it as early. So it's easy to see people going crazy when it goes against your personal political beliefs. And so Schromer says, Young Turks, I would disagree on most things, but I respect the fact, even misguided, that they're trying to bring about political reform, even if I disagree with how they are trying. Sure, well, that's fine. Valor said, but the thing is that, you know what? I don't respect it. Hitler, and I'll say it on this channel, Hitler was trying to bring about political reform. I don't respect that. And I'm not saying the Young Turks are Nazis. I'm just saying that just because political reform might be a good idea doesn't mean that all political reformers should be respected. I was disgusted by the Young Turks when they started to call for harm against police officers by twisting things and painting all police as evil and racist. They did that a while ago. To be fair, first time I saw you on Trek Yards, you rubbed me the wrong way. I came back and met you and Bird for the rest, and the rest is history. Well, yeah, I know some people don't like me because, like on Trek Yards, people were accusing me of being so negative and all that, and that's because here's the thing, Stuart, I love Stuart, but he's so darn nice and positive. He is the consummate Canadian, right? And so you put me in a room with Stuart and I look like a complete a-hole. But you put me in a room with Lore Reloaded and I look like a nice guy. So it just depends on who I'm sitting with. Comply with mother's rights by giving the chance to not, comply with the mother's rights by giving the chance to not be in her life. The only way for a fetus to do that is to be carried to term. True. A 1 or 6-year-old is not dependent on the parents to live. May be dependent on others, but it doesn't have to be the parents. It's legally required to be the parents. You don't live in a society where you can just like give your kid to somebody. Although people do that, it's not legal. But you understand the point. Just because it's possible to pass on the kid to someone else after they're born doesn't change the fact that it's a horribly flawed analogy anyway. But because the child is not sucking away the life force of the mom. Mr. Miles says, no, it's supposed to be Batwoman. Thanks, autocorrect. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that was like the worst autocorrect ever. Wow. When I saw it say Black Woman Crazy, I was like, were you trying to make a slight about Mrs. Handy Trigger here? Valor says, seen and interacted with Young Turks fans who are crazy as hell. Well, I'm not going to judge them by their fans. But I don't remember the name of the guy. The main guy, Young Turks. He just rubbed me the wrong way from the very beginning. What about Fat Woman Crazy? Dan says, there's a Family Guy where Brian kills a dog by running over it by accident. He tells people he killed, and when they found out it was a dog, they don't care. Okay. Not sure what the point of that was. Darren says, I respect the fact that Young Turks do seem to bathe on occasion and have the ability to walk upright. Well, I'll give them that much. Some people have chosen suicide by cop or death by cop. That is true. Who recently uttered the phrase, the world of next generation doesn't exist anymore? And what does that say about hope and the future? If you're talking about the recent Variety interview with Jean-Luc Picard himself, Patrick Stewart, I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah, it is what it is. We put you in a room with Lore Reloaded and you look like a Mensa member. That's mean. I stopped watching Young Turks after 2016 when they were going off the rails. Even Jimmy Dore distanced himself from them and brought back their share in his channel brand. I don't know them by name, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. And Mr. Miles says, Scenic Unger. Scenic Young... I have no idea what you're trying to tell me. Host of the Young... Oh, that's the host of the Young Turks. Okay. The Young Turks has gotten worse, more so with TDS. I'm not sure what TDS is. The Wolfpack is only to help the left, not help the right. Well, that's the problem. You know, the thing is that a lot of the times when we see various groups come up, they tend to, they tend to be designed for justice for pick a group, right? And so if it's justice for these downtrodden liberals, then obviously they don't give a crap about conservatives, right? And don't get me wrong, conservatives do it too. They'll have a group that's justice for, those poor, innocent gun owners, but they don't give a crap about liberals, right? So it's a two-edged sword, but that's the nature of politics. Many hospitals have no questions asked infant drop-off policy protected by law where you can drop off a baby and leave it no responsibility. Some states that's legal, some states it's not. Personally, I don't believe in that, but I understand that the idea behind it is that's a better option than abortion. And I would agree it's better than abortion, but it's still an absolutely reprehensible thing to do. Scenic is the main guy that started and hosted and now running for Congress in California, and he'll probably win, depending on what district he's in. For me, it has to be life begins at conception, because once you start setting a line over when it's okay to kill, the line can be shifted at any stage. I actually believe life begins at conception because at conception is when someone is a genetically complete person. Before conception, they are two individual cells. But after conception, they are a genetically complete human. Jeff says, I will refrain from saying anything. I want to be kind. Oh, that's okay. You don't have to be kind. You just have to be not a dick. TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. Oh, okay. It's pronounced Jenk. Not that it matters. Okay. I'll be plain and simple Jeff from now on. That would probably make it easier. Well, I'll be plain simple Jeff from no, Jeff. I thought you were talking about somebody else. Jeff, you don't have to hold back. Don't worry. I can take it. I'm a big boy. Vile Child is the real reason Vile Mike has over 100 subs. That's true. It's pronounced Chunk Ugur. As that name, yeah. Why can't people just have regular old names? I hate that. And I know it's probably some, because I don't think he's. I think his parents are probably from another country or whatever. But maybe it's Turkish. Maybe that's the whole idea. The host Young Turk's name is pronounced Cenk Uygur. Well, however you say it, he's still a dick. At least in what I've seen of him. Schromer says, check out Jimmy Dore, former Young Turks. He is actually really good. I don't agree with him a lot politically, but he's very fair. He even has supported Trump where he's agreed with policy. Well, that's cool. Believe me, I don't have time to start watching political channels because I can barely keep up with my own political opinions. Mr. Miles and Vile Child should form a union to collectively bargain for better wages. No, they shouldn't. Oh, it's not you. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure if you have something, and you guys know I say this all the time, but I want to make sure it bears repeating. If you have something to say and you want to, hit me over the head with something, do it. Because if I'd rather be wrong and get piled on for being wrong than to be wrong and not know. And so I'll just fight you back if I'm not convinced. I refer to the creator of Young Turks as Chunk Yogurt. I agree with your life definition. It begins at conception. At that point, you have separate DNA. Exactly. You are a unique individual at that point, and that DNA will not change. Vile Child and Mr. Miles, the B Team. When you have a video and you need it to get views, you can call on the B Team. I should be hit over the head. No, you should not. I'm pretty sure. What was that device that somebody came up with that Mrs. Antichecker needed to apply to my head? Glad I caught you live. Not religious, but I still like to have discussions about other beliefs. That's cool, Tubin. And you know what? That's the whole idea. The very premise of Rational Roundtable. The name is supposed to mean something. It's that we can discuss literally anything and keep a relatively level head. And even when we get passionate about it, we must hold the understanding that this is not me. Like, if I say, oh my gosh, that's crazy, I'm not saying that you are a lesser of a person, that you're a bad person or anything just because we disagree on political topic A or religious topic B. That we can separate the argumentation from our friendships and still be friends. And that's the idea. I don't mind if people disagree with others on certain beliefs or politics, but personal attacks on anyone is uncalled for and shows people's true colors and toxicity. I tend to agree with you on that. And you guys know that when I generally insult people, it's usually meant in jest. I don't, like I might say, oh, you're a jerk. I mean, how many times have I said that? And obviously I don't mean it. I make snaps at Bird of Prey, at Lore Reloaded, at Mr. Miles, at all you guys from one time or another I tend to make fun of. And even when I say, oh, you're an idiot if you believe that, I don't literally mean that. I just mean that I strongly disagree. And sometimes people have to call me on it because I've taken it too far a couple of times. And if I do, please call me on it, because then I want to make sure, because if I say something that actually offends you, if I say, Vile Mike, you are just being stupid about this, and you say, whoa, are you actually saying I'm stupid? Then I would immediately back up and say, no, Vile, I don't think you're stupid. I just think that you're wrong, and I'm passionate about it. Aberjam says, to expand on your comment, sperm contains all the same genetic material as the guy, same for eggs and the woman, at the point of conception then becomes a unique and separate entity. Correct. And that's why conception, I believe, is the moment of life beginning. And that's not a religious statement in any way, shape, or form. And I don't believe we should make it a religious argument because religion is not the law of the land. Why not a rectangle table? Because actually, that's a good question. Same purpose as King Arthur. A round table has no head, meaning that we are all equals. You say Mr. Miles is a jerk 10 to 15 times a live stream. Exactly. Scientifically, we joke because we love. That's the idea. By the way, I want to run something by you guys, since those of you that are here right now, I know tend to come to these Rational Roundtable streams. But something that I am debating about, and I just like your opinion on before I wrap things up here. And I am going to wrap things up in just a minute, but I wanted to talk about this for just a minute. I'm thinking about possibly just moving all my live streams to this channel. Now, there's some good and bad to that. The good is it would actually help the Anti-Trekker channel as far as the analytics and stuff and the way that YouTube tracks, because they would no longer see these 2-hour live streams that have 300 views as opposed to a 20-minute video that gets 20,000 views. And that actually does affect your channel as far as how much they promote your channel and suggest your videos and stuff. So it could help the Anti-Trekker channel as far as growth is concerned. That being said, it also means no super chats unless this channel grows. Because even though I technically have enough subscribers for monetization, I don't have enough recent views for monetization. Now, what I would do, of course, the first couple of weeks that I did it is tell everybody, hey, whenever I was getting ready to do a live stream, to say, hey, go over to the Rational Roundtable channel if you want to check out the live stream. So I'm debating about that. I know that it's been suggested to me by people like Nerdrotic, because he started doing that to help his analytics. I know some people will move their live streams after, like, you have the live stream and then you move it over to another channel, and I don't know how well that affects it. The problem is with Nerdrotic is a bad example because his channel grew so much that it doesn't really matter at this point. So I don't know, something I'm thinking about. I'm just wondering if you guys have any opinions on it. Perhaps we should work on not calling someone stupid when you just being passionately disagree with him. I know I should. That's a problem. I gotta, I need to work on that. But, actually, square tables are equal on all stars. There really isn't a head. Well, true, a square table would work as well, but round table allows for more seating. Biomike says I would not do that. Sci-Fi says I'm so small, keeping my lives up helps me outnumber wise. Well, yeah, when you're really getting started, having any kind of content on the channel helps, because every view goes to help build the channel. But once you get to a point where your live streams are significantly altering the analytics of the channel to a negative, that's where it's like, but I like doing the live streams on the Anti-Trekker channel. I don't know. Darren says, do not move all your live streams to this channel. Just be assertive and don't allow politic, religion discussion on the Anti-Trekker channel. Grow a bigger pair. Well, sorry. I suck at that. No, and it's not that I don't have a pair. It's that I like answering all the questions that come up. So I'm going to have to just get tougher as far as saying, nope, not going to talk about that. Save it for Rational Roundtable. Going to send you a message on Twitter in a bit and a couple of questions about our project. All right, Piano. No, I do not support moving the live streams here for many reasons. Okay. Just have game nights here. That's actually another thing I was thinking about, is moving the game streams to this channel because 2 reasons. One is that it wouldn't affect the analytics on the Anti-Trekker channel. And 2, the game streams, well, those of us that go to the game streams enjoy them. Not a lot of people go to them compared to the regular live streams. So I may do that as well. And that'll also change once I can do this full time, which I do hope will happen. I'm fingers crossed, prayers, all that. I'm hoping this year, by the end of the year, that I can do this full time. If that's the case, then I'll be able to do game streams regularly on this channel while we discuss literally anything. And then Anti-Trekker will stick to the sci-fi theme stuff, Star Trek, Star Wars mainly. I would be better having them all here so you wouldn't limit topics of this conversation. That's kind of what I was thinking of. It would free me up to talk about anything, and not have to worry about if the channel got demonetized. Why not move the live streams after the words? Because otherwise I won't be able to super chat you anymore. That's the problem. Is that that's a negative on the move. Is that super chats would come to a grinding halt, and the tricky thing there is moving live streams from one channel to another. I mean, live streams are they're big files. I mean, you're talking 2, 3, 4 hour files. You have to download them and then upload them to the other channel. And that's why most people do what I'm doing now, which is making them go unlisted, but it clutters up my analytics and kind of messes things up. I would rather be able to delete them. So I'm just debating. And so, but yeah, I'm working on it. Send a message on Skype yesterday, only mentioning it because you were about to head out. Don't need to look at it now. Thank you, Bio. I will check it out. Darren says, need to say grow an even bigger pair, but I couldn't make it work grammatically. That's okay. Live streams do demonstrably affect your channel visibility. Moving them would benefit, but I would suggest changing Rational Roundtable to Anti-Trekker Live and having Rational Roundtable as one of its programs. Well, but I love the channel name. I've had that channel name forever. And it still works. I mean, we're still talking about whatever. Rational Roundtable doesn't necessarily mean religious and political. It can be Star Trek and Star Wars. And in fact, on Rational Roundtable back in days past, we had a show called The Untitled Show about nerdy stuff, which was very much like the kind of topics we cover on Anti-Trekker. Even though this channel isn't monetized, just set up a Streamlab donation link. Well, there is actually a Streamlab donation link. It is in the description, but nobody uses it. Because nobody loves me. Mr. Mouse says, I'm in favor of roundtables because you can use Stargate as part of the design. Okay. Jeff still wants a phaser. Phasers would be cool. Valor says, I apologize. My reasoning is purely selfish on my own. Wanted to keep your live streams, move them afterwards. It's not something, I'll tell you this, Valor. It's not something I would do overnight. But it's just something that I've thought about recently. Particularly if the channel continues to grow. But with that, I am going to wrap it up because I got a lot of work to do today. I'm going to try to get that video done, maybe do a game stream later, and I got some work around the house to do as well. So with that, guys, thank you for hanging out with me. We had a good talk, and hopefully things will continue to go as well as possible for all of us. So take care. New credits.
You son of a bitch, Anti-Trekker! You son of a bitch, Anti-Trekker! You son of